Kentucky primary night, and hello everybody. We welcome you here to WHAS11. I'm Doug Proffitt. It's going to be a big night for the state of Kentucky with the nation watching this race right here on your screen. The 4th District congressional race. Some of the early results will start popping along on the bottom of your screen. These are absentee ballots and their early voting numbers coming in first. The polls closed 30 minutes ago. You know, in a move that we've never seen, the president is on the attack in this race, even sending his Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to Northern Kentucky yesterday in an attempt to defeat Thomas Massie, who's held the office since 2012. And moments ago, Donald Trump and Massie going at it again. Well, I'm joined now by the two of the best political experts in Kentuckiana, WHAS11's longtime political analyst, Republican Iris Wilbur-Glick of IW Strategies, and David Tandy, the former Metro Council president. He is the Democrat. As you look on the map there, though, those are the 21 counties of the 4th Congressional District, snaking from right here. We've got Shelby, Spencer, and Oldham involved in our metro area, all the way into parts of Appalachia and northern Kentucky. So let's talk to Iris and David really quickly here about the flap that sort of broke out on X just a little while ago. Here it is from Donald Trump saying, horrible Congressman Thomas Massie put out an old endorsement from many years ago of him by me long before I found out that he was the worst congressman in the history of our country. The president moments ago saying, I endorsed Ed Gallrein, a true American patriot, which Massie knows full well. So the statement that he put out is fraudulent, just like he is fraudulent. Withdraw your statement, your fake statement, Massie, right now, President Donald J. Trump. Well, Massie did respond. He was saying, is this the one? And it's a picture of an old endorsement from 2022. Iris, I guess I'll just pick up on that. These two have been going at it, mostly the president, since the weekend. A full-blown assault on Thomas Massie. How is it having an impact in this race?
Well, the 4th District is all in Eastern time zone, and so the vote has been cast for CD4, the 4th Congressional District here in the Commonwealth. And so this sort of slap fight back and forth now is sort of, you know, it won't impact the votes now unless folks are in line, which I doubt at this point. You know, all the ballots have been cast, and all the county clerks throughout the 4th District now are doing their part to ensure that the process is official and get those votes tallied up to the Secretary of State. And so, you know, the back and forth, I'm not going to speak too much into maybe trying to understand the psyche of the two, but it is a little bit of a head scratcher as to try to, you know, if I'm Congressman Massie, trying to make a connection, well, I was good enough a couple years ago and now I'm not, is a very interesting sort of 11th hour take. You know, if I'm an incumbent congressman and I'm proud of the record and how I've delivered my constituent services, how I represent the 4th District, I mean, that should be enough, particularly a multi-term congressman being able to stand on his own record. And so in lieu of that, it reeks desperation. Are you trying to fool, trick, deceive voters? Because if this is some sort of inside baseball attempt to delineate between 22's endorsement versus Trump's engagement now in 2026, it's such a bizarre way to bring voters in.
Well, David, let me ask you, this is quite an independent district. People have told us in our reporting up there, they'll vote for Donald Trump. They'll vote for Thomas Massie. There are Democrats in this race. But in the end tonight, do you believe we are electing the next congressman for the 4th District?
Wouldn't say that necessarily. I mean, listen. You know, there's two parts that I could say with that. One, from the just strongly partisan side of things, I think Democrats would have a outside shot, just depending on honestly how this primary kind of shakes itself out. Is there enough bad blood that's been spilt in this primary to make it such that a strong Democratic candidate, you know, could have a shot? It's possible, but. And probably all reality with the history of that particular district, I think, you know, a Republican would continue to carry it.
You see some of the early results coming in. It's some interesting races we're going to watch. In fact, the U.S. Senate here in Kentucky, does Daniel Cameron win Louisville? Well,
I mean, that would be something we'll see. I mean, certainly he's been here and he's campaigned in Louisville. He actually, at one point, they were at it was Daniel Cameron and Charles Booker at the same Bishops Roundtable event here in Louisville, in the West End of Louisville. So at least, you know, from that standpoint, Republican side, that's the only time that I've seen a Republican actually come into the West End of Louisville for that Senate race. So we will see.
Iris, would you expect Daniel Cameron to win Louisville?
I think he'll perform well, just because even right before President Trump's endorsement, Daniel Cameron was able to benefit from strong name ID, sort of that residual sort of recognition coming from being 2 times a statewide ballot, and in his race for Attorney General, and then the Republican nomination for governor last cycle. And so I think up until the Trump endorsement, Cameron was able to hold the line despite being outspent and sort of record ratio. But yeah, I think tonight we'll see if he's able to hold the line. But going back to the record spend, the Louisville television market here is the only one that encompasses all Kentucky counties. You have a little bit of bleed over for Southern Indiana, but all the Senate campaigns, including the outside groups, had record spend here. And so, the dollar that Cameron was able to stretch here was diluted because of the other 2 Republican candidates.
All right, we're so excited to have you part of our big team. Of course, our analysts here have been with us for 6 years now, so they've got quite the production here with WHAS11. And we've also got Alex Dederer on election results, our new election results system with results updating in real time. Alex is going to be taking a closer look at that Massie Gallrein race and the U.S. Senate race as those numbers continue to get bigger. Plus, our WHAS11 team coverage comes to you from across the state tonight. Clarice Shaley is here in Metro Louisville, where voters will decide a new mayor this year. Ian Hardwitt is with Charles Booker, running on the Democratic side of the U.S. Senate race. Conroy DeLuche is with the Republican candidate Daniel Cameron. But first, we're going to start with our political reporter, Isaiah Kim Martinez. He is covering candidate Andy Barr at the Central Bank Center there in Lexington. Isaiah, let's you and I talk a little bit about not only the race that you are in, but I want to talk about the Thomas Massie race, because you were also covering the Massie campaign just yesterday. The president going back and forth. That district is so interesting because Trump received about 67% of that district vote in 2024. Massie has been running unopposed since 2024, and he got such a big vote there. So from the people you talked with yesterday in that district, they were pretty much matching the results of the polls we've been watching.
Yeah, Doug, I mean, so much of this race, like many, comes down to turnout, right? Who turns out for this race? We know that 4th Congressional in Kentucky tends to be lower voter turnout. They tend not to get as much media coverage as maybe some other areas like Lexington and Louisville, but that is not the case in this race because, as you said, the president has weighed into this. He badly wants Thomas Massie out of Congress, off Capitol Hill, and has gone as far as not just to endorse Ed Gallrein, but to your point, you guys talked about this, at the top of the show, to send his Secretary of War to Kentucky to stump for Gallrein. This is, in many ways uncharted territory. You've talked about it, sort of the national attention of this is something we haven't seen in several years. And based on some of the polling we're seeing, a lot of this is going to come down to, do we see more young Republicans go to the polls? Because they tend to, the data show, favor Thomas Massie, or is it going to be what we typically see on primary nights, which is the 55 and up voters tend to sort of dominate that field? If that is the case, the data show, again, that actually favors Ed Gallrein in this race. So in many ways, this is a race of party unity versus ideology. And we're going to have to see exactly how this shakes out. Right now, of course, polls closing just in the last 40 minutes. But we know in West Kentucky, for example, many of those voters are on Central Time. So those votes we won't be able to really count until after 7 o'clock. Will that matter, though, right? When it comes to some of these other races, U.S. Senate, for example, could that be called earlier? We'll have to see. Andy Barr off to an early lead, according to those first 10,000 votes or so. But it's so early. We're counting early voting. There's still a lot to kind of be, weigh in on this. Of course, the Secretary of State here in Kentucky says that voter turnout is higher than the usual primary. He expected north of 20%. So that could weigh into all this as well.
Well, Isaiah, you and I know where the biggest audience, one of the biggest audiences is going to be tonight. That's 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So Donald Trump, how did Thomas Massie lose such a big lead in the polls? What has changed? And of course, there's a lot on the line for Donald Trump here. Can he continue a string of victories that even go back to Bill Cassidy in Louisiana from Saturday?
Well, Doug, it's kind of a multifaceted answer, and Thomas Massie will admit this to you himself. If you talk to him, he'll say that typically from what they see in their internal polling, a Trump endorsement in their district would move the needle about 20 points. He says he typically wins primaries, as we've seen in the past, about 80-20. So a Trump endorsement alone, this is Massie's argument, would not make the race, in his words, as competitive as it is now. He believes what is sort of swayed this even more to make it as competitive as it is all the ads you've seen on the air, and that's because this is the most expensive U.S. House primary in history. Somewhere north of $30 million spent on this race. Congressman Massie has been very vocal about some of the backers of Ed Gallrein, in his words, you know, those who what he calls the pro-Israel lobby, some pretty wealthy donors into the Gallrein campaign. So this is beyond just Trump. This is also typically what has become a very close partnership between Republicans on Capitol Hill and Israel, and those who support sending foreign aid to Israel. We know that that's something that Thomas Massie and, quite frankly, Rand Paul and others have been very much against, but that is going to be, or we have seen this, be kind of a real player in this, part of the reason why we're seeing many of those polls come in so tight.
All right, we just popped some early election results up. I just want to tell everybody, let's show that graphic again. Michael Adams is also posting on X, hey, we're counting, keep refreshing. Isaiah, you and I want to talk about voter turnout. We know from Michael Adams that we probably had low voter turnout here in the metro Louisville area. But in this district, 4th Congressional District, so much motivation. There were people from other states who came into Kentucky to campaign for Massie. They can't vote, but just goes to show you this enormous interest again. Once again, I want to remind viewers, very early vote totals on the screen now. So what do you think about that, Isaiah?
Well, yeah, Doug, to your point, I mean, I talked with a 19-year-old who actually did vote for President Trump in 2024. He's from New York, actually drove 12 hours from New York to sort of the eastern part of Thomas Massie's district yesterday. And he said he's part of the local Republican Party in the city that he's from in New York. And all of them came down to help door knock, or many of them to help door knock for Thomas Massie. In his words, he believes that many young Republicans, sort of, I guess, depending on who you talk to, what analysts call these sort of young conservative activists, very much Constitution or bust minded, right? Constitutional rights is sort of top tier for them. Liberty Republicans, you could call them. They very much are motivated in this race. But to be fair to Ed Gallrein and sort of the support system behind that campaign, we've heard this at Massie events, largely with Massie supporters, a couple voters here and there go up to the mic and say, gosh, why are you giving the president such a hard time? Why do you time and time again stand in his way? And some of those voters were probably 50, 55 years old. Again, those voters who typically believe party unity is a big, big deal and are frustrated, at least now, by what Massie has done, at least in the last year or so. So again, just part of the reason why that sort of younger voter versus maybe some of the senior citizens voting in the 4th Congressional, how that could really be maybe the decider in this race, perhaps.
Okay, and you are at Andy Barr's headquarters. You and I are going to talk about him in just a little bit. Again, Andy Barr, so unknown to many people in Louisville until now, of course, with those ads. We're going to talk about why this race, Andy Barr and Daniel Cameron, seem to lose a little steam after that Trump endorsement. Isaiah will join you with that in a minute. Now let's go to Alex Dieterer. She is tracking the live election results in our special election studio tonight. And Alex, go ahead and show us the results. If you have any questions for Iris and David too, they are here. We can talk about what you're getting ready to pinpoint there for us.
All right, Doug. So as we've been tracking for the last about 40 minutes now since the polls have closed, it's still a very small margin of voters in their votes who have been in so far. So we're still looking at about 4% right here, but we can see that Ed Gallrein is in the lead right now. But as we said, again, only 4% reporting right now. But here in our area, we are looking at what we have here in Spencer County. They have gotten some numbers in for us right now. So what we are seeing in Spencer County is Gallrein taking the lead. But again, we need to take this all into perspective. Only 30 15, so 45 votes right now have been in so far. But as we've said from the beginning, I mean, this is the most expensive U.S. House primary that we've seen in American history. And that has to do with a lot of leadway that Trump's endorsement for Gallrein has gone. So we've seen kind of Thomas Massie and President Donald Trump not seen eye to eye. So Massie did have a big push for the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files and then also voted against the One Big Beautiful bill. So we're really seeing a lot of Trump endorsement against or for Gallrein in that change. And so let's take a look right here. So again, we are only seeing about 4% polling right now. And then if we walk over here to the U.S. Senate race, which is another big race that we're all keeping a close eye on, we've only got about 2%. But again, here in Spencer County, which is in our area, about 40 votes so far. But we can see that Andy Barr has taken the lead here against Daniel Cameron. But what I want to mention, Doug, is that a lot of our eyes are going to be on Louisville and Jefferson County. So I actually spoke with Daniel Cameron yesterday at his 34th and final campaign stop in Elizabethtown in Hardin County, where he grew up. And I asked him, do you feel confident that you will win Jefferson County, and how important is it to win Louisville? He said it's always important to win Jefferson County because of how many votes are here. But he's also not only confident he'll win the Republican nomination for U.S. Senate, but also he's confident he will win Louisville and Jefferson County. Now, he spent most of his career here in Louisville, especially as Attorney General of Kentucky. But what we're seeing right now is a lot of backing for Andy Barr, who's been in office since 2012, and he also has the endorsement of Donald Trump. And so what we're seeing right now, again, only 3% down here in Laurel County. We're seeing more percentages come in from the lower part of Kentucky, and obviously anything can change here with only about 4% of the votes and the polling's in so far. But I mean, here, let's go back to the Congressional District 4. I mean, this is the big one, this national slim margin race. As these votes continue to come in, we will continue to watch. Yeah, Doug.
I'm glad you went back to this race. This is so fascinating. I could actually watch this map just all night long. We could just keep it on you. You're doing a great job. To explain to me how the map works for our viewers who are seeing this for the first time. The counties in yellow, are those the ones reporting the results? Is that what you're saying? And then, of course, there would be Spencer County right next to Metro Louisville.
Right. So here we do have Spencer County, and you can see it's more of an orange color, and you can see that orange correlates to Ed Gallrein. So what we're seeing when we see these colors is where the votes have been going as the results have been coming in. And a neat thing here at this map that we'll continue to show you throughout the stream and throughout the night tonight is this heat index. So what we see is these orange colors have dimmed a little bit, have gone a little bit more pastel, and that shows the heat, the number of votes for a candidate, for a nominee that have been here in these counties. So throughout the night, we will continue to see these colors getting darker and lighter depending on the number of votes that go for a candidate. So right now what we're seeing is just this orange color for Gallrein because, again, only 4% have been coming in, but we'll continue to see this map of District 4 be spread with red and orange colors throughout the night, Doug.
The Spencer County going for Gallrein at the moment, not a surprise. Of course, he's from Shelbyville. Iris and David, I'll ask you real quick. Some of the other map colors, though, are also showing some Gallrein numbers coming in, even in the far eastern side of Thomas Massie's district, where he's held a stronghold. Again, very early numbers.
Very early, and as I mentioned in our earlier segment, Doug, I'm particularly paying attention to Boone County. It is one of the more populous counties in the northern Kentucky, greater Cincinnati area. There's several highly populated, dense registrant of votes in Boone County that are some of us have watched for years, cycle over cycle.
Alex, if you're still there, can you punch up Boone County real quick? Of course, that's near the Cincinnati area. Those numbers ought to be coming up pretty fast. And David, as you're watching this too, Gallrein sort of taking the early lead with very small percentages in, about 4%.
Right. Yeah. It's still a little early, but the margin, you're seeing a fairly sizable margin right now. But it'll be like I said, the more populous counties haven't come in yet. Your Boone County's not in. We're seeing some numbers from Kenton County. Haven't seen any numbers from Campbell. So, and all of that is the Cincinnati suburb.
I know you all have some connections in those counties, so if you do any of that great investigative reporting work you both do, just bring it along. So we're going to get back to these election results in just a minute. We want to check in with Conroy DeLuche. He is covering Daniel Cameron at Chapel 1888 in LaGrange, Kentucky. That's an event venue there in downtown LaGrange. So Conroy, I know you said earlier there had been a traffic jam on 71. Are people starting to arrive?
Yeah, Doug, it felt like a huge wave arrived just after 6:15 tonight. So I imagine a lot of people had some issues in Louisville and coming up north here to LaGrange. But as you can see, the room has filled out quite a bit. Most of these tables in here are full. And if you've been following Daniel Cameron's career, this is certainly a little bit smaller of a venue than ones that we've seen in the past. He had election nights in 2023, both in downtown Louisville at the Galt House and the Marriott. So just a little bit different of a setting out here at a former church here in downtown LaGrange. And, you know, Daniel Cameron wears his faith on his sleeve and has made that a cornerstone in each of his campaigns. And he's certainly going to be steering into that as the campaign wound down. And we'll have to see what happens tonight, as Donald Trump did not switch his endorsement. He endorsed Andy Barr. Now, Daniel Cameron has enjoyed Trump's endorsement in the past, as along with support from Senator Mitch McConnell, but it looks like Andy Barr had a lot of momentum on his side. But I did talk to State Senator Lindsey Titchener a little bit ago. She was the first lawmaker we saw come in here tonight, and she said even though Trump is on Barr's side, she still has faith that Cameron can pull off an upset.
We don't like to be told what to do in Kentucky, and I think that's going to lean towards his favor, not getting Trump's endorsement, that people are going to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to look at this with my own perspective, and I'm going to make my own decision.
Yeah, Doug, she was alluding to the Bevin race earlier today, and that was, of course, a famously close race in 2019 that Donald Trump came and rallied for Matt Bevin the night before, but Andy Beshear pulled it out. So we'll have to see, can Donald Trump's endorsement maybe backfire a little bit in favor of Cameron, who has steered more into an independent streak as of late, Doug, as you were pointing out earlier in the newsroom.
Conroy, thanks a lot. We're going to join you again here as we continue to cover the Daniel Cameron side. Let's go to the other side of the U.S. Senate race, and that is Charles Booker. The Democrat, is at Portal on Lytle Street in the Portland neighborhood, and Ian Hardwitt is following the Booker campaign tonight. Ian?
That's right, Doug. We've got a lot of longtime Booker supporters out here tonight. From the hood to the holler was the phrase that he coined back in 2020 when he first made that run for U.S. Senate. And we are hearing from people from the hood. If you want to take a look backstage with me real quick, we'll introduce you to DJ All Days back here. He grew up with Charles Booker in the Shawnee neighborhood, and he says they met in college. He's supporting Charles Booker because health equity is what's on his mind. Charles Booker has a platform of providing Medicare coverage for everybody in this country, and it's bringing people to the table even from Eastern Kentucky. If you look at this popsicle cart, Oh My Lollies over here, one of the women behind that, Renissa Sparkman, she's from Knott County in Eastern Kentucky, and she said Charles Booker's campaign to her is about unity and bringing people together and focusing on what makes us more alike than what makes us different. Now, as far as the poll results that are coming in, I just checked it. The Associated Press is reporting Amy McGrath is currently ahead of Charles Booker with only 2% of the vote reporting. We got about a 900 vote lead for Amy McGrath right now. Charles Booker has lost to her before. That Senate primary race that I mentioned where he coined from the hood to holler, she beat him in that one. The margin was pretty slim though, 15,000 votes. McGrath later went on to lose to McConnell in that race. Charles Booker is also up against other candidates that he's run against before. Pamela Stevenson, who's currently in the State House. Charles Booker beat her for a State House seat back in 2018. She's currently trailing well behind McGrath and Booker, but we want to remind you, only about 2% of the vote reporting there. We'll bring you more voices from Charles Booker's party out here in the Portland neighborhood, and we'll hear from Charles Booker in a one-on-one interview later on tonight. For now, I'm reporting live in Portland with photojournalist Gabby DeGeorge for WHAS 11 on your side.
Ian, thank you very much. Let's go back to the race the nation's talking about, and of course the White House focusing on tonight. Thomas Massie and Ed Gallrein, some more results coming in for you here. Right now, Ed Gallrein with very early precincts reporting 56% to 44%. The vote totals very small there. Alex Dieterer is following it county by county. Let's go back to you, Alex. You just heard Iris and David were talking about Boone County, Kentucky, very important county to keep an eye on. How are things going now on our map?
So, Doug, still a very slim margin right here, about 6% polls reporting. And when we look at Boone County, we've got about 0%. So keeping a close eye, but you can see no votes have been totaled yet from Boone County, but we will continue to keep a close eye here on Boone County. But something to keep in mind here for District 4 is Trump's influence and Trump's endorsement. And Iris, David, you can speak a little bit more about this. But when we look at District 4, we're looking at areas that are close to Louisville and districts and close to Cincinnati up here, which lean more Democratic. And so when it comes to Trump's influence here for District 4, it's up in the air for some reports and polls on how impactful that influence will be. Again, only 6% reporting, just under 8,000 votes in so far for this race. But we are seeing Gallrein taking an early lead. Again, only about less than 8,000 votes, 7,000 we're looking at right now. So polls have been closed for about an hour now. So we're keeping a close eye here on Trump's influence here for District 4 in this race. Doug?
Okay, Alex, thank you very much. Iris wants to give us some reporting. You've got some coming in from maybe northern Kentucky on this race.
That's right, Doug. And so I'm watching Boone County. It's typically overall a bellwether county for a lot of Republican races. And as noted earlier, northern Kentucky as a whole has been inconsistent in Republican primary participation. They experience on average a bit lower compared to state average on the Republican side, like I said. But obviously, the cycle this time around is very dramatically different. And so I'm looking at Union, which is a town in Boone County, and this precinct, a couple of the precincts have reported within this Union voting location, and it tallies Thomas Massie 239 votes, Ed Gallrein as 333. And so if that holds in a lot of the voting locations throughout Boone County, shows that margin, I mean, that's exactly how Gallrein's going to run up the score. If Congressman Massie, an incumbent, cannot count on Boone County, which is historically, proud in its heritage, so to, and the party apparatus is libertarian leaning, Congressman Massie's been able to run up the score in that county time and time again. If he's having trouble in Union, which is within Boone County outside of greater Cincinnati, I mean, that could be an indicator of the night to come.
But could this also be a Mitch McConnell setup where McConnell always suffered in Lexington and Louisville, and then he ran the state? The numbers came in big when he got outside the metro areas for Thomas Massie. So
raw votes matter. And so, we don't want to read too much into county lines, except for when I look at a precinct like Union, it could be a good indicator of how that county delivers in sort of that pocket of the 4th District. And so the interesting observation at this point early in the night is that Boone County is highly dense. And so you need all the sort of raw votes regardless of which precinct and which county. But if I'm Congressman Massie, where I've spent, and my outside folks have spent record dollars and door knocking and all the operations, Boone County is a top priority because of the vote density. And so Boone County is one to watch tonight. And, with Union reporting accordingly, I mean, it could be a really good night for Ed Gallrein.
Get to you in just a second, but first it is now 7 o'clock. That means the polls are closing in western Kentucky, really going to impact the U.S. Senate race in Kentucky. We're going to see those numbers getting bigger and bigger, and we thank you so much for watching WHAS 11 Plus. We are live streaming for you throughout the evening as we are keeping an eye on that big Massie-Gallrein race. And the Associated Press at 7 o'clock just called it for Andy Barr. Irish, you and I talked months ago about the AP's early calls on some of these races. So why do you think they went so fast on that, David?
Well, it's interesting. We're kind of looking at some of the results that are coming in. I've been looking more at just the state election results there. Barr's got a 4,000 vote lead. He's at 64-27 over Cameron. And then everybody else is in single digits, and the volume of voters on the Republican side is higher than what you're seeing on the Democratic side. So I mean that makes sense for them to call it that quickly.
So the Associated Press just called it for Andy Barr. Let's go real quickly to Alex Dieter, and then I want to go to our Conroy Deluche, who is at the Daniel Cameron headquarters, to give our folks back in our election headquarters the early results of what's coming. Here's next. Let's go to Alex Dieter. So Alex, there you have it. The Associated Press called it for Andy Barr. Why do you think that happened? What's your map showing us on the results?
So as you can see, Doug, I mean, only 5% reporting, and this data point come from AP reporting, only 5%, but we are seeing just a lot of orange here on this map. And like I mentioned just a little bit ago, that correlates with the candidate. So all of this orange correlates with Andy Barr. So you can see all of this orange right here. We've got me, and then we've got Spencer here in our area. But what's interesting about this is the Trump endorsement behind Andy Barr. And speaking to Daniel Cameron yesterday, I said, has anything in your campaign changed after Donald Trump endorsed Andy Barr? Because we do know that back in 2023, Donald Trump did endorse Daniel Cameron in the 2023 Kentucky gubernatorial election. And so a little bit of a flip-flop, and he said nothing in his campaign has changed. And we've seen from the forefront in Daniel Cameron's campaign that faith has been a foundation in his campaign. But here we're seeing it, AP calling it for Andy Barr, who has been in Congress for about 13 years now, taking the lead and taking the Republican nomination. So we're seeing only 5% still, Doug. I mean, we've only been an hour since the initial polls closed, and so we're still going to see all of these numbers trickle in. And I'll show you more of the heat and the totals of these counties in our area as more results come in.
You got it, Alex. Again, only 109 precincts reporting so far out of 3,189 in the state of Kentucky. So let's go to Conroy Deluche. He's at the Daniel Cameron headquarters in LaGrange. Conroy, quite the blow for Daniel Cameron right at 7 o'clock, which is 5% of the vote. The Associated Press already saying this race is over. You can pack it up and go home.
Well, his supporters have not packed up and gone home yet. We all just kind of absorbed that news just a little bit ago. I was talking with another reporter over here when suddenly we heard the news that the race was already called just after 7 o'clock. So I'm not sure if the news has trickled out to his supporters just yet. Some of them had actually just gotten in town because there was a bad wreck on 71, and obviously we had some weather issues, and getting here at 7 o'clock from Louisville, where a lot of his supporters are, can be a challenge. But the room is mostly full at this point. The food is out. We'll have to see how long people stick around for, because certainly we know that that endorsement from Donald Trump to now possible Senator Andy Barr was going to be a blow for Cameron, but not quite this decisive to call the race just after polls closed over in western Kentucky. The sun's not even set out here in LaGrange, and it appears that the race may be already called by the Associated Press. So we'll certainly have to keep an eye on things up here. We'll stay up here in LaGrange and see what happens, but at this point, nobody's leaving the room just yet. I've not even had a chance to talk to anybody at this time with the news that's just come in. But for Daniel Cameron, I mean, this is quite a political fall to lose for the second time in 3 years statewide. He was perceived as the next big name in GOP politics here in Kentucky by winning that Attorney General's race in 2019. Speaking at the RNC back in 2020, Donald Trump spoke very highly of him. Senator Mitch McConnell has spoken very highly of him over the years, but obviously with the endorsement of Trump to Andy Barr, that coupled with the fact that he did lose back in 2023 in a year that all the other Republicans, I believe, won by more than 200,000 votes. Daniel Cameron lost to the Democratic incumbent Andy Beshear in what was otherwise a red-friendly year for the GOP. So this is now the second statewide loss in just a few years, and Doug, I know you know a number of names over the years who have been rising stars in their respective parties. Jack Conway comes to mind, Adam Edlin for the Democrats. Now Daniel Cameron, we'll have to see what the next phase of his life looks like. He's got 3 young kids, young wife. He's certainly still young. I don't even think he's 45 at this point. So there may still be a political future for him, but right now it looks like it's Andy Barr, and Daniel Cameron will have to stay tuned to see what's next for him. Doug?
All right, Conroy, thank you very much. So much there. And again, for our streaming audience, if you're just clicking in through the night, 6 minutes ago, the Associated Press, which is the gold standard for calling elections in our state, called it for Andy Barr. Let's go to WHAS11's political reporter, Isaiah Kim Martinez. He is right with the Andy Barr headquarters here tonight. And Isaiah, so much going on here with this quick endorsement. The endorsement from Donald Trump. Are we seeing that play out here? We kept hearing about the internal polls, Andy Barr's team touting that he went up 20 points right after that endorsement. The Associated Press is seeing a trend here for Daniel Cameron it just does not like.
Yeah, and Doug, to paint the picture for you here for a second, right? We have a live feed going on a separate phone because the media is actually staged right next door to the main ballroom here at the Central Bank Center here in Lexington, where this watch party was supposed to start at 7, but this race, of course, called at just after, 7:03? So you can get this sense that even the Barr campaign perhaps did not expect it to be this fast. I'm told by Barr's primary campaign spokesperson, his communications director. I asked him, should we expect Congressman Barr to speak soon? He said in the next hour or so. I said around 8 p.m. I asked. He said in the next half hour to an hour. You see the stage set up behind me. This could be a much earlier victory speech than maybe some were expecting. Now, big picture though, we did know that Andy was going to be the front runner, Congressman Barr, coming into tonight. Just you take in the Trump endorsement aspect at all. You take the fundraising aspect of this as well. We know that Congressman Barr, from his time on Capitol Hill, has been able to make quite a bit of fundraising gains that transfer over to his Senate campaign. So he started with a couple $1 million all ready to spend, cash on hand, and only built it from there. We know Daniel Cameron fundraising was a real issue. After the governor's race, where he lost to Andy Beshear in 2023, he lost a lot of that McConnell influence. The senator's circle and many of those allies and big-time fundraisers that have helped Mitch McConnell over the years, they moved off from Daniel Cameron. So he did not have the war chest from the very beginning to really compete when this was not a sprint. I'm sure Daniel Cameron would have liked it to be a sprint. It was the marathon. And ultimately, that money really mattered because we know that Daniel Cameron, that last week, they actually had to pull some ads, Doug. You know this. I mean, almost unheard of in the final week before a GOP primary versus Congressman Barr, of course, had the ads still running that Donald Trump had endorsed him on Oaks Day, May 1st, so just 18 days ago. And just from what we're seeing on the map, proved just too much for Daniel Cameron to compete with. Congressman Barr, of course, also has relationships in D.C. on Capitol Hill. That certainly helped. He had the support of many of the sitting lawmakers, those who have influence. And just looking at the map here, according to the Associated Press, you could see Scott County, which is Georgetown. You could see Franklin County, Frankfort, and some parts of southeastern Kentucky all voting overwhelmingly for Andy Barr, even with just 5% reporting in. This is an early race that was called. We know President Trump in 2024, Kentucky was one of the first, if not the first, to call this state for him at about, I think it was 7:05. Congressman Barr doing something very similar.
So the president can chalk up one victory in Kentucky so far. And Isaiah, that means the campaign will start right away. Since it's going to be an early night for Andy Barr, I'd imagine he is going to sort of set the theme when he comes out on that stage. Do you think we'll see a different candidate, a man who has the supporting also of Mitch McConnell in the background there against possibly Charles Booker, if Charles Booker wins the Democratic nomination?
Well, Doug, that's a great question. Is he going to come out here and will we see a sense of maybe some showboating or this feeling that the GOP primary was the election? I would say my hunch tells me probably not. Congressman Barr has been through many races in the past. He is, whether you like him or not, he's a disciplined candidate. He knows when to speak on something, when to maybe, even the president's endorsement. We were asking him for months and months, have you asked for it? Are you going to get it? And he stayed very keeping those cards kind of close to the vest there. So I expect, even in his speech, him still to say what he has been saying to this point, and that this Senate race is not a given. Even if he is the Republican nominee in ruby red Kentucky, he believes Charles Booker will win on the Democratic side. We'll have to see about that. But he believes, because Governor Andy Beshear has won in this state before, that it's not something that he's just going to call it for himself right off the bat. He believes there's still another race, which there is in November, and he believes that is something that he doesn't want to get ahead of himself. But who knows? He could come up and say, just can't beat the power of the president. So we'll have to see, again, in the next half hour to an hour when he's set to speak.
Okay, it was right as those polls closed for Western Kentucky, 7 o'clock. Thank you, Isaiah. Now going on 12 minutes ago. As Isaiah said, Andy Barr could be showing up here within the hour. We'll go back to him live in just a minute. So, David Tandy, do you see the impact here of the Trump endorsement? And at one point, Daniel Cameron was sort of neck and neck in the polls here. And then we heard about the internal polling. Nobody knew whether to really trust that. Mm-hmm. It seems like this must be paying off for Andy Barr.
I think really the Trump endorsement was just the icing on the cake. If you really kind of looked at the race, the way that it was playing out, Cameron benefited from running, this being his second time running statewide. So he had that early name ID. His inability to then raise enough money to really kind of go toe to toe with Barr on the airwaves, I think ultimately will hurt him in the end, which goes back to, it's the fundamentals of any political campaign. It boils down to, do you have the money to be on air? Because when you're on the TV airwaves, it makes you real in the mind, as a real candidate in the minds of the voters.
Iris, were you surprised to see Daniel Cameron switch to such a faith-based message? He almost sounded like Governor Andy Beshear for a while there in the campaign. And that obviously has not helped him here, or did the endorsement just sort of sink his case to voters?
Well, as David alluded to, there wasn't a sort of third-party poll that showed Andy Barr within sort of that margin or even exceed and prevail ahead of Daniel until March. And so to me, like when I was watching that real time, that's just another demonstration that campaign spend matters. I know a lot of us voters, we get, there's a lot of fatigue. I know we a lot of frustration around, negative ads or a lot of blitzing, when we're all trying to enjoy live sports and so forth, and you see all those back-to-back campaign ads, but there's a reason you see them. It's because they're effective. And so the fact that Congressman Barr was able to spend early and his allies spend early, that March indicator with so much runway left of the primary was a strong sign to me that his messaging was effective to Republican voters in Kentucky, and to the extent where we're seeing the early return. I've been part of statewide Senate races where when the AP called it at 7, they were able to wait it, and we know. And so what I'm looking for the rest of the night is the margin between Daniel Cameron and Andy Barr. How much was Andy able to run ahead of Daniel? Because I would love to sort of do an analysis to break down the dollars spent on each side, and then accounting for Nate Morris, who dropped out, how much of an impact regarding campaign dollars ultimately spent, which was north of, what, 40 million?
And one more thing, Doug, you brought up the fact about Cameron's message being more faith-based. For Cameron, in my opinion, he had to lean in on what was authentic to him. He could not run an Andy Barr campaign where he was saying, I'm anti-DEI, I'm, red, white, and blue. He couldn't go that hard with a message, because I think it would come across inauthentic for himself. In that particular race. Not saying that he's some champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but voters were sitting there looking at him like, wait a minute, you're saying that things are that things are at a disadvantage for black folks, and you're in the Republican primary. So it just wouldn't come across authentic in that way. So he couldn't lean into a campaign like that the way that Andy Barr or Nate Morris could, as they were doing going back and forth.
But if I may jump in, Doug,
right
as a primary Republican voter, getting all the mail, getting all the digital ads and so forth.
I got a stack of it.
Yeah, and so aside from like the recent blitz, where the Trump endorsement, was a differentiator, you looked side by side to the three frontrunners. The campaign message was, I'm not saying uniform, but there was hardly any degrees of separation. And so if I'm Daniel Cameron, I need to be authentic, and I know Daniel Cameron, and that kind of messaging is true to his heart. But where else do you run? What other kind of messaging can you kind of turn to that will resonate with voters that is still true to yourself? And again, when you look at the three in the last 6-8 months, pretty uniform positions on policy, not a lot of differences in sort of the tone, other than who was saying the message.
So we're going to go to the Charles Booker headquarters in just a second. But first, you brought up Boone County, the official election results starting to really roll in here from the state election site. Right now, they're saying 7,769 votes counted, with Ed Gallrein leading 57% to 43% in Boone County alone. Even though those results aren't huge numbers yet, Iris, is this a trend that we can latch on to yet?
I think so. I mean, if I were a betting person, again, Boone County, there's a reason a lot of us Republican operatives pay attention, just because it's populous, and those are the type of Republican voters that typically indicate the trend of the district. Again, like there's been some inconsistencies cycle over cycle regarding like the percentage of turnout, but there's never been a doubt regarding the actual breakdown of the vote. And so, there's a lot of energy, clearly a lot of spend up there, a lot of national interest, and Boone County voters are highly motivated to show up and vote. And I think the margin that we're seeing now, where Gallrein's breaking away, I expect to see a lot of that throughout the CD4. I will note, I'm going to be watching, the home county of Congressman Massie, who's former judge executive of Lewis County. And so I would hope that he would run up the score there. But yeah, I think there's some other key counties, Kenton County, Campbell County, Hug, the greater Cincinnati area. They too are highly dense, highly populated areas, concentrated Republican votes. And so I think for Congressman Massie to kind of turn this trend on its head, he must run up the score in the other two of the three counties. But I just don't see that happening, particularly of the record spin and the national attention that this race has received.
All right, again, no bigger audience than in Washington right now in the White House for this race. So we're bouncing back and forth. We're going to leave the U.S. Senate race and on the Republican side. Let's go to the U.S. Senate race on the Democratic side. Ian Hardwitt is at Charles Booker's headquarters. He is in the Portland neighborhood. And Ian, if the polls turn out to be true and the results continue to go now that we've got Western Kentucky numbers coming in, Charles Booker could very well later tonight be the nominee from the Democratic side. I know you are talking to voters there at your headquarters.
That's right, Doug. I'm here with Val Watts. She's been a longtime Charles Booker supporter. She really looks up to him. She says he's a good role model, and she's really supported his platform on health care. He supports Medicare for all, going with the universal health care route. Val, tell us a little bit about the hood to the holler. You grew up in Crofton, Kentucky. You moved to Louisville 30 years ago. Tell us a little bit about his message bringing people together.
His message actually, even before this new administration is here, his message was that he wanted to heal Kentucky, basically, and it made a lot of sense. I finally started listening. It was a little bit after his first run, and I was like, okay, he makes sense. I'm a Governor Beshear fan because he's from down by Dawson Springs, which is by where I'm from. So they raise horses there, so I understood that. But as far as Charles is concerned, he is very concerned with, are we okay every day, everyone? Not just people that, actually, need health care 24/7. Are you okay? You look okay, but do you know you're okay? That's the question. So healthcare is a big deal. It's not just for people that are sick. It's not just for people that have families. It is for single people like me. It is for everyone. We need to make sure that we are healthy. We need to make sure we need to do more preventive measures instead of waiting until somebody's sick and sending them 30 prescriptions from pharmaceutical that they don't need, and they'll later die from taking all of those prescriptions. So I love the fact that he is very adamant about health care. He has girls. He understands the childbirth disparities in African American women, black women, I say black, but black women, that we die in childbirth. Nobody really pays attention to what we need. And so that's very essential for him, you know, because I have nieces that are growing up that may end up having a reproductive problem that I have, and it's on record. It's nothing that I'm hiding. If I leave the state of Kentucky at this moment and go to a Republican state, I am one of the candidates that was in the legislation in 2024. We get what is called an ATOP pregnancy, even though I can't have kids anymore, and I don't have the packages to have kids. It's a family show, sorry. And if I go to a Republican-led state, they watch me die. And I'm not even having a baby. I just have an emergency. So that is my issue as well. Not just a man standing there and making choices for a woman, but he understands what I need. You know what I'm saying? So, because he's dealt with childbirth. So I'm just praying that Kentucky just understands what we need, not what we want, but what we need going further. And I'm very happy that he's a black man, because like I told you before, I think kids need to see a representation of every ethnicity, not just Caucasian, not just black, not just white, not just Latino. They need to see who they are sitting in a candidate's seat. So I'm just very happy that he sacrificed his life to run for office, and he won't stop. Yeah. And we're going to keep encouraging him.
You talked a little bit about how you've met Amy McGrath, one of his challengers. You had nice things to say about her. You know, tell me a little bit about why Amy McGrath and Charles Booker are neck and neck. You know, what are their similarities, and what kind of drove you right over the line to Charles Booker?
Well, their similarities are they both are fighting for something that I feel is important for me. Both candidates are. She's also fighting for women's rights. She's a vet. She's done so many things, and it's like we always put people in the White House and say, oh, did they serve? Did he serve time? Did he? But we never talk about the women that sacrifice. We never give praise to the women that were on the front lines, or the nurses, or any of that. We can run for office as well. So I want young ladies to see her run. I want them to see her win. I want them to understand why she's running, and I want people to see him run. So we need a better dynamics in our political spectrum. We need a little bit of everyone there. So, you know, it's not just about poor people. It's about people that right now are about to lose everything that they work for, that are middle class, you know, so everybody just needs to come on one accord. And I think Charles Booker is good for that for Kentucky. He doesn't have like a negative view of anybody. You've never heard him talk bad about anybody. He's just been in the gap for everyone.
Val Watts here saying that Charles Booker is the unity candidate. We'll hear from him later tonight here on WHAS 11. Reporting live from the Portland neighborhood, I'm Ian Hardwitt, on your side.
Ian, thank you so much. Okay, we want to pick up on the white-hot Thomas Massie, Ed Gallrein race as we are keeping an eye on different counties. And we are joined live by reporter Jay Shakur. He is with the ABC affiliate in Cincinnati covering Northern Kentucky, WCPO television. We thank Jay so much for joining us. Jay, we are watching election results that are so thin, but Ed Gallrein in the lead so far. What's the mood in that headquarters? I imagine you were prepared for a long night there in Northern Kentucky.
That's right. I'm definitely prepared for a long night here in Northern Kentucky. Listening to staffers talk, they think it's going to be on the shorter side here. The room is electric. It's full of people here. This is just one of two spaces that's dedicated to supporters of Massie as they watch these election results come in. Massie, I talked to him yesterday at one of his stops here in Northern Kentucky, and he was very confident in this race. He talked about his record. He talked about his connection to voters, 14 years serving Kentucky District 4. He talks about the connection, the trust they have, and he repeatedly called his opponent, Ed Gallrein, a rubber stamp for D.C. And so he's very hopeful here that he can actually win this, an election or race where literally the eyes of the country are watching this election. Doug?
Jay, you know that area so well. You know, I've been following your coverage at WCPO the last several days, and I've been seeing interviews pop up with both Ed Gallrein and Thomas Massie. Where can you pinpoint it? Where did Massie's support finally erode in the end? Could you all sense it? What did it happen in the last week, 2 weeks? Can you pinpoint a change there?
I can't pinpoint a change that recent. Talking to voters, a lot of their disdain or their breaking away from Massie came from his vote against the One Big Beautiful Bill. That was really the signature piece of legislation in President Trump's second term that had a lot of items that Republican voters, supporters of President Trump wanted. And they saw that vote, talking to voters, they saw that vote as an outright rejection of the Trump agenda. Although Massie countered that saying, you know, I vote 90% with the party, 90% with the Republican Party, with the president. However, on the 10%, I disagree. I'm going to stand by my principles. So I think that was the linchpin, talking to voters, where they say, you know what, we probably want to look elsewhere for someone to represent us. It's not the case for all voters, obviously, but that, I think, talking to them, that was the big piece.
Jay, I'm sort of fascinated where you're actually standing. Can you paint the room for us? I know a lot of national media came in. I mean, how many national reporters are you seeing? I know we had heard at one point that we're making room for 40 plus. What is the crush of attention like where you were standing there in the Massie headquarters?
Definitely. I'll let Eric, my photog, show you this room here. Massive in terms of press. The crowd, as I said, is large. We're here at the Marriott near CVG, the Cincinnati airport, here in northern Kentucky, right across the river from Cincinnati. You see tons of people. Again, this is just one of two rooms. Again, the energy is electric. People are excited. Voters are excited. They're optimistic. They're going in with their heads held high. And as you probably saw, there are tons of media from across the country here covering this race. A race that you think would be local has obviously made national attention given the president's outright disdain for incumbent Massie.
And, you know, you saw that back and forth going just before we even went on the air at 6:30 tonight. Jay, talk to us about, we heard so much about the unique voter in that district, that they'll vote for Donald Trump, but they'll also vote for Thomas Massie. What is that unique grip he's had on that district over all these years since being elected in 2012?
Definitely. I think a lot of it comes from his history in politics. He was judge executive in one of the rural counties here, and so he has a long history with the voters. He's a farmer. That's a special connection to a lot of parts of northern Kentucky and Kentucky voters. So I think it comes back to his history, 14 years of not only serving them, but beyond that on the federal level, locally here. Talking to a voter yesterday, I asked about that. You know, do you still support the president, although he's not backing your congressman that you would like to be elected? And they do. They do support the president. However, they feel, in the words of one lady, he's wrong on this one.
Is Massie viewed as a congressman, Jay, who brought a lot back to the district, who brought a lot of largesse back to the district? You know, we have Senator Mitch McConnell wrapping up a 41-year career here, who's just widely known for bringing back billions of dollars to the district. Does Massie have that reputation up there?
I wouldn't say Massie's reputation is quite as extensive as Senator McConnell's, but he does again have that connection with farmers. He has that connection with those who do that type of labor, that type of work. I think his connection is more so standing out, giving Kentucky District 4 a voice, essentially putting Kentucky District 4 on the national stage, in the national dialogue. So I think that is what a lot of voters are talking to them. That's what they appreciate about Massie. Not necessarily, you know, the largesse that you get back in terms of dollars and the pork that is in bills that are passed in Congress, but more so what he's done for the reputation and showing that in Massie's words and in voters' words, you can't buy Kentucky District 4.
I got one more question for you, Jay. You did excellent reporting. Again, Jay Shakur joining us from WCPO, the ABC station in Cincinnati. We thank you so much for your perspective. Now, tell me about Boone County. We're getting ready to go to our election headquarters here to focus in on Boone County. Why is that such an important county for Thomas Massie to win?
definitely. Here in Boone County, you have a big, huge Trump support here. This Northern Kentucky in general, but particularly here in this county, Trump won Massie's district, I believe, by 32 points in 2024. So it's a strongly supportive district for the president. And so coming up against that, dealing with that, and being, on the opposite end of the president's ire, it makes this interesting, particularly here in Boone County, given the president won this district by such large margins.
All right, Jay, thanks again. We're going to come back to you through the evening and tell that Connor Steffen, a WHAS 11 alum, we're keeping an eye on him, and he keep up the good work up there. Y'all have got a great team. All right, let's switch over to Alex Dieterer in our election studio here tonight. Alex, you can zoom in on those counties, and then we're going to talk about it with Iris and David here, our longtime political analysts, now in their sixth year with us here at WHAS 11. Alex?
Right, Doug. So as you can see right here on our map, we are seeing the first red county here in Mason County for Thomas Massie. We've got 99% of the estimated total votes in, and we're seeing a close margin between Massie and Gallrein by just about 30 votes. As you can see, over 2,000 votes are in, but this is the first real red that we're seeing here in District 4. But as you can see up here in Boone County, we've got just over 35% of the estimated total of the votes in, and you can still see Gallrein is pulling ahead by just about 1,000 votes here at around 7:30, just 30 minutes since all of the polls have closed. But what I want to show you all really quickly, what I find fascinating, is you can see right here some voter turnout trends that we've seen over the past Republican primaries. And you can see kind of this drop from the 2020 primary all the way down. So we've lost about 30,000 votes here from 2020 to 2024 of voters in the Kentucky primary, and still the numbers here in 2026 continue to climb. We've only got about 30,000 votes polled right now so far. But as you can see, right here, just like Jay mentioned, District 4 is solidly Republican. And in the 2024 presidential election, District 4 actually backed President Donald Trump by about 35 points. So what we're seeing here right now, and what we're going to continue to follow throughout the evening, is if Trump's influence in this endorsement for Ed Gallrein is really going to pull him ahead in these polls and take over the Republican nomination from Thomas Massie. But again, only about 24% reporting so far. We're continuing to see right here in Spencer County, it continues to come in, continues to stay pretty orange, saying that is for Ed Gallrein. And when we come over and look at the heat, so we can see these darker colors go down a little bit in their coloring. We can see that Spencer County, while it may be more pastel of the orange, it's only because we don't even have 80% in yet, but it is showing that Ed Gallrein is taking about 30% more of the vote here than Thomas Massie. But just as Iris has been keeping her eye on, we're going to keep looking at Boone County, where Ed Gallrein seems to be pulling ahead pretty solidly right here at about 7:30. Doug?
Alex, thank you very much. Let's get reaction now and analysis. You saw those results being popped up there, Iris, and we're seeing sort of the weakening of the results for Thomas Massie right in front of our eyes. The polls have been closed in that district since 6 o'clock. Got an hour and a half under our belt here, but this one's still so tight.
It is, Doug, and those of us that have run statewide campaigns before, or even CD4 in previous years when it was an open seat. Northern Kentucky, we love our county clerks up there, but they're not the first ones to report in races, particularly in primaries, and that does not sort of tip off that there's concern or reason for concern. They just typically don't operate as one of the first sets of counties to report on primary night and even actually general election night. And so we still have a long night ahead of us to figure out, the margin between, Gallrein and Massie. The totals that we're seeing now, a lot of that, we're starting to see the precincts trickle in, but that initial bump, as you know, it was the absentee and early vote. And so, we do have quite a bit of time, I believe, before a lot of the more populous counties are report. I've seen a little bit of trickle in with some of the counties that are along the state line there, closer to the Louisville market, and then also out towards eastern Kentucky. Those early vote and absentee numbers are trickling in now, and some of what I've seen is Gallrein, again, just a couple dozen ballots cast before today, but Gallrein has consistently been in the lead. So, there's, I think, some good observations there as an indicator of how tonight could trend for Gallrein.
Well, let's talk about the specifics of the vote that Thomas Massie himself told us in an interview Friday night when he was in LaGrange at a coffee shop. He said, undecided women would be the key for me, and they were going to target women on different platforms where women were over the weekend on price, on MAHA, and on inflation. And then he said the young voters, maybe the young libertarians who are and now become anti-Trump. Do you think he got any of that, David, or are we just seeing a total collapse here? Maybe the younger voters didn't turn out.
I think you're seeing the typical primary voter kind of showing up here, which would tend to be a little bit older, more seasoned, let's say. That's who they would be. Turn out, and that would then favor the president and his endorsed candidate.
Did you hear some of his ads he put on it the last few days? They almost seemed sort of resigned. It was almost a thank you for allowing me to serve. He has said before that he thought this race would be close, and if he was lose, he was going to go back to Manchester and stay on his compound there in eastern Kentucky.
Not surprised by the tone. Again, when you look at the candidates head-to-head on policy positions, you're not going to see a lot of differences there. And so if I'm the incumbent Congressman Thomas Massie, I have to be careful in how I contrast because I can't alienate previous policy positions and then sort of like that voting base that they're gunning for. One thing that I've been looking leading up to today, is average voter turnout. We mentioned it earlier. Generally speaking, Northern Kentucky, when it comes to Republican primaries, they're not the most reliable, consistent, high turnout region of the state. When I've been part of statewide campaigns, we have to run it up as hard as we can, but recognize the real pickup opportunity was east and west, just because the voter participation was a lot more predictable. If I'm Congressman Massie going into tonight, average to low-ish voter turnout is good for me. But the fact that we're seeing record turnout in this, midterm primary, I think is a strong indicator that Gallrein could perform very well tonight. To draw out maybe, folks that typically vote maybe in presidential elections only, or, they're here and there, or newly registered voters, or those who just feel like, Congressman Massie, this was the final straw. And so you see a lot of protest votes. And so the fact that we're seeing high increased voter turnout in CD4, I think is a big indicator for what's to come to favor Ed Gallrein.
I had so many people who were out of state, David, have been texting me the last couple of days, including today, saying that Thomas Massie was going to go down in defeat. They were so convinced of it. But here in Kentucky, we were seeing a much different story because of this totally unique district.
Yeah, I mean, again, you can see what's happening on the national stage, and that there's that narrative. But then there's what people are saying to each other at the coffee shop and in the aisle of the grocery store. And I think that's what makes it feel like that Massie had more of a shot in order to try to win this race.
Okay, we want to touch in on the Louisville mayor's race real quickly, and our Clarice Shaley is on that. And we're going to get right back to discussing Thomas Massie and Ed Gallrein. So Clarice, I know you're joining us now to give us a picture of how the mayor's race is going. She's not there. Okay, if Isaiah is free to talk, I'd like to bring him in and we can talk about the Massie race, because he was actually up there in northern Kentucky all day long. He went to Mays Lick, Kentucky, where huge numbers of people were turning out. I just think, is there a chance that about this district, Iris, that Massie still has votes left to pick up? Are there some numbers that are delayed that we haven't seen coming into the systems yet?
No, Doug, because beyond the big three counties, and then what I also view as sort of like the Louisville, right, so Oldham, Shelby, that are on our side, you can't squeeze out of that rock more people, more raw votes. And so the fact that Gallrein is trending strongly in the more populous counties, there's nowhere else to go. And so last map, unless you all are looking at something different, again, not criticizing our our election workers and our county clerks. But Shelby and Oldham sometimes are not quick to report numbers, and I'm waiting to see what that looks like there.
What are you seeing on Metro Louisville, too?
So Louisville, so again, shout out to David Yates, who was also on the ballot tonight in the Democratic primary for county clerk, but this is his first, cycle as county clerk, and so I'm ensuring that they're triple checking everything to ensure that things look well. But based off of the tracking that I was observing from the Attorney General's office, which, they serve as sort of the officials in case there's, complaints or election complaints, they do all the monitoring. I have not seen anything or had not heard reports that there would be issues in Louisville. And so, double thumbs up to all of our election workers and our county clerk, David Yates, for doing a tremendous job. And so far, too, it looks like we're experiencing record turnout, record Democratic turnout in off-year midterm cycle, a lot of action on the Democratic side, and so excited to kind of see how the race breaks, although nonpartisan, but sort of the top of the ticket here would be that Louisville mayor's race.
You're saying record turnout statewide?
In Jefferson County.
In Jefferson County.
Yep, of Democratic voters participating. Again, some of the elections on the ballot were nonpartisan, right? So Metro Council and the mayor's race, everything else broke down party, primary participation. But as of, I believe, 3:30, 4:30 today, we were tracking percentage-wise exceeding the 22 cycle, so, federal midterm type of election for Democratic voter participation. And so interested to break that down to see what ultimately drove folks to the polls to participate either in the mayor's race or was it the U.S. Senate primary on the Democratic side?
Let's talk about the mayor's race a little bit because we're going to go back to Cincinnati and talk about Massie Gallrein in just about 4 minutes from now. So, David, the top two vote getters, it's a nonpartisan election. This is historic for Louisville. I did have some callers on our rant line earlier today. They were confused, they thought they could vote for anybody, and you couldn't. But in the mayor's race in the Metro Council, of course, you could with the nonpartisan race. The top two vote getters get to go. So are we talking Craig Greenberg and Shamika Parrish, right?
Right.
Resetting a matchup.
Exactly.
Where Shamika did really well in her first attempt in that primary.
She did, and it'll be interesting, again, once you get it down to then the two candidates, you have a binary choice, it'll potential to see how tight the race would get. Now, what we want to see as we're looking at that race is can Shamika Parrish Wright get to about 30% of the vote? If she does, then it says, okay, she's got an opportunity to try to really tighten that race up and do something in the fall. If Mayor Greenberg is able to kind of keep it at getting 50 to 60% of the vote in this primary, then that's pretty strong. And
that's pretty overwhelming. How do you explain Craig Greenberg's alliance with the top Republicans in Frankfort? And how has Louisville done so well? He's a Democrat, yet the Republicans are here all the time, sort of cheering on this Louisville mayor.
Right. I mean, there was an event as recent as Friday of last week where Mayor Craig Greenberg was able to celebrate what he and others were able to advocate on behalf of Louisville regarding this most recent regular session of the General Assembly, where, over $1 billion will be invested in Louisville, Kentucky. That includes roads, infrastructure, our big institutions like the University of Louisville, big initiatives involving our nonprofit sector. And so, as someone who sort of works like the partisan flair, it was refreshing to see not only Louisville Democrats lock arms, with Republicans from throughout the state, but Mayor Greenberg was essentially the host of the event. And so, to your question, Doug, I think actions speak sort of louder than I think a lot of us experience fatigue around like partisan rhetoric. Craig Greenberg, I think, has a great reputation in Frankfort because when he shows up, he wants to have that dialogue. But two, he knows sort of his lane where he wants to bring folks together to figure out how we advance Louisville. And then some of the stickier issues that feel more partisan, more political, I think there's sort of a mutual respect that we won't always be in alignment.
I want you all to join in this next interview real quick. Let's pick this up in a second. Let's go back to Cincinnati.
Okay.
We're going to go to Logan McDonald from WCPO. He is at the Ed Gallrein headquarters.
All right.
So we'll listen in here. We'll talk to Logan. Logan, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Well, thank you so much. I can hear the noise around you there. What kind of feeling are you picking up? What kind of vibe in the room now as the trend is going? And I'm sure they're not ready to call any victory yet. but it does seem to be trending Ed Gallrein's way right now.
It does certainly seem that way right now. Just 44% of precincts reporting, but it's 55% of the votes for Gallrein and 45 for Massie. So the Trump-backed ex-Navy SEAL does have an early lead, and his campaign's picked up a lot of steam in recent weeks. Behind that Trump endorsement and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth coming here to Hebron, Kentucky, just yesterday to show his support for Gallrein. Now it's high spirits here. Gallrein walked in just around an hour ago, smile on his face, and that tracks with the results so far. Now, again, only up 49%. This is a live update. 46% for Massie of the votes, 54% for Gallrein. So that gap is narrowing as we speak a little bit, but 49% of precincts now reporting Gallrein still an early lead. Something to keep an eye on. But live here in Covington, I'm Logan McDonald.
Hey, Logan, if you can still hear me, I got a couple of questions for you, if that's okay. Ed Gallrein said in an interview up there in Cincinnati over the weekend on being a puppet for Donald Trump. In fact, he told your TV station, WCPO, I can't be bullied, I can't be BS'd, and I can't be bought. Do you get the sense, though, that people in that room want him to be a rubber stamp for President Trump because Thomas Massie was so independent of Trump?
That does seem a little bit of a positive for the supporters of Gallrein, him being lockstep with the president. That's actually something that Gallrein also highlighted a lot yesterday at that event in Hebron with Pete Hegseth, talking about the need for somebody to advocate for the president and his administration. Hegseth talking about the need to not have an obstructionist, as he said, like Thomas Massie. And it seems like the supporters of Gallrein, that's what they want. They want somebody who can support the president and his agenda. And that seems to be a positive for those who are placing a vote for Gallrein over Massie.
So the Cincinnati television market is really crucial to this district. In Louisville, we sort of covered just a few of the counties in the big 4th congressional district. And Ed Gallrein turned down 8 different debates. Where did people in your viewing area learn about him? Was it through last-minute interviews? I saw him on Cincinnati TV a lot over the weekend.
Yeah, it really does seem like a lot of this has been, kind of brought forth by the Trump administration. Some of this public awareness. Again, that Hegseth event yesterday, I was there personally. There was over 100 people, a lot of people in the community, just simply finding this support from the president's office. I've been following the community Facebook groups here in Northern Kentucky, and a lot of the chatter has again been some complaints about Massie breaking with the president, complaints about, how lockstep with Republicans he's been because of some of those splits with the president. And again, this public campaign by President Trump, his administration, and Hegseth, that has been a huge way that they have really raised this awareness for Gallrein here in Kentucky. And Gallrein also playing up a lot about him being born and raised here, former Navy SEAL, military service member, and that really has been a lot of the public awareness campaign coming from Washington.
So, Logan, I know you've been talking to the operatives of Ed Gallrein. Are you all expecting, if he were to secure a victory tonight, and we're probably a ways away from seeing that, are you all expecting a live phone call from President Donald Trump into that room where you are?
Sorry, I actually had a little bit of issues hearing you on that last question. Just repeat one last time.
President Trump did a telephone rally yesterday with both Andy Barr and Ed Gallrein. Do you expect, if Ed Gallrein pulls off a victory, that you all will be hearing from President Trump in that room in a phone call tonight?
That's a good question, and a question that I will be sure to ask Gallrein. It hasn't been discussed here yet tonight, but President Trump has been very vocal on social media about his support for it. As you mentioned, that support also for Barr, who won the nomination. So this is something to keep an eye on throughout the course of the night if the president's going to chime in. The answer is to be determined, but I'll be sure to keep tabs and keep updated.
Okay, Logan McDonald, excellent reporting for us. You're at the Ed Massie headquarters there in Northern Kentucky. Thank you so much. We'll be joining you a little later on there, and we are getting very close, Iris and David, to possibly hearing from Andy Barr. Let's go to our political reporter, Isaiah Kim Martinez. He's in Lexington there at the Central Bank Center. And Isaiah, as we're putting on the election results as we have them here We've got, of course, Andy Barr, called by the Associated Press right at 7 o'clock as Western Kentucky's polls were closing 60% to 31%. Just sort of a winning handily here in this. So let's pick up with Andy Barr first, and I want to talk to you about Thomas, Massie, and Gallrein. What's the stage where you are now? Are we expecting to hear from Andy Barr soon?
Doug, it seems like it could be any minute, right? The media was basically staged right next to what was supposed to be this big ballroom for this watch party that was supposed to start at 7. As you know, the results and the win for Andy Barr was called shortly after 7 o'clock. So you get the sense this is a little bit of a reroute moment, right? Call an audible and get the folks into this room, because we expect, like you had mentioned off the top, Congressman Barr to speak any minute now up on that stage. And you see the folks behind me really starting to come in dozens now. This room's really starting to fill up. I'm already seeing some current state lawmakers, including State Senator Brandon Storm, who's one of many lawmakers, not just in Frankfort, but on Capitol Hill, who have endorsed Andy Barr, or who did endorse Andy Barr in this Republican primary. So again, the room is filling up, and we should expect to hear that victory speech any minute, and we'll pay close attention to the tone. Is he talking like somebody who already won the whole thing, or somebody who knows he has to face a Democrat here in November?
All right, Isaiah, you and I right now are getting a 2-minute warning because Daniel Cameron may come out on the stage any minute, so we don't want to step on that. But I got a couple more questions for you, which, of course, that's the hint. You and I can't talk over Daniel Cameron. So let's talk about these election results that are coming in so far. I mean, are we seeing the Donald Trump endorsement play into these huge numbers now coming in from Andy Barr?
Doug, it's remarkable. I mean, I'm on the Associated Press's page right now. 60% of the votes counted. Of course, Ed Gallrein up 8%, but that doesn't tell the whole story. You look at counties going up and down northern Kentucky. Boone County, Gallrein plus 10. Campbell County, Gallrein plus 3.9. Kenton County, Gallrein plus 5.7. And the only couple counties right now where Massie is up is Lewis County, which is his home county, no surprise there, and coincidentally Mason County by just 1.6%. Massie is up. Coincidentally, that's where we were yesterday over by Mays Lick. All these other ones that are, some of them close to 100% reporting right now, Gallrein has a significant lead, Doug.
So that would make Donald Trump 2 for 2 in Kentucky tonight with Andy Barr and Ed Gallrein, if these numbers hold true.
Well, and actually, it looking
Alvarado?
3 for 3 with Congressman Barr advancing, creates an open seat, and Ralph Alvarado, former state senator for that greater Lexington area, who received the Trump nomination, looks like he coasts to the Republican nomination.
So Isaiah, you spent a lot of time asking Thomas Massie over the course of the last few weeks what would happen if he were to lose this race, and he sort of went back and forth to saying it would be close, and then he had more confidence in the last few days.
Yeah, the messaging, to be fair to Thomas Massie, has been mixed, right? When I talked to him about a week ago, sort of the sentiment was, you know, this race is in the margin of error, it's very close. And then he told me yesterday that if young voter turnout is a few points higher, he believes he could win in a blowout. So it was kind of all, I don't want to say all over the place, but definitely you sort of gotten different messages depending on when you talk to him, in what location. We know that he has been asked about his political future. If he were to lose this race, he has said previously in Louisville, actually, over at U of L, that would be it for him politically. He'd go back to his farm, focus on that, his family. But now when you ask him about his political future, there have been rumors about maybe some other potential opportunities. Maybe if Senator Paul were to run for president, leave his seat. Now he's not necessarily saying his political career is done if he were to lose this. I believe certainly right now those conversations are being had as these numbers come in. I did go ahead and reach out to his spokesperson, just asked how things were going over there. I haven't gotten a response from them in the last couple hours. I'm sure they're processing the results right now, but now with 72% in, we are getting closer and closer to what many people across the country see as a referendum, see as a true sign that we've seen in other states, that when the president weighs in on a race against another Republican, he wins. Doug.
And then some people, though, thought Thomas Massie may be able to buck the trend on that endorsement because of that unique district that we know about in northern Kentucky. So we asked Thomas Massie in LaGrange on Friday night, Isaiah, if he felt that the Epstein files, his crusade on the Epstein files, had hurt him or helped him in his district. He said he felt it had helped him. So what was it, his vote against the big, beautiful bill that's possibly done him in?
Doug, it appears, and this is what one of the reporters over in Cincinnati with WCPO was saying, the big beautiful bill, that was the giant sort of tax policy, domestic spending bill for ICE. And we are just getting news right now.
There you go.
I'm hearing from our executive producer. The Associated Press has called Ed Gallrein the winner. He's up by 10 points. He is going to be the Republican nominee. Congressman Thomas Massie will be out of that seat, Doug. An extraordinary development, just given what we've seen across the country. Just a massive victory for President Trump yet again within the Republican Party. It is his, clearly.
So here we have it, this breaking development at 5 minutes before 8. The Associated Press confident enough to call this for Ed Gallrein. Isaiah, Thomas Massie's held that seat since 2012. By the way, any minute now, we're expecting to hear from Daniel Cameron, so we might be switching gears there. Let's go there right now. We'll get back to you, Isaiah, in just a second. Let's go to LaGrange, Kentucky, and Daniel Cameron getting ready to speak.
Thank you.
Well, tonight didn't exactly turn out how we wanted it to, but I'm reminded by those of you all that are in this room this evening just how lucky, how fortunate, how blessed Mackenzie and I to call you friends, to call some of you family members, but to call you all brothers and sisters in Christ. And in life, a good friend of mine told me this, Russell Coleman, said that life is not linear. There are ups and downs, there are peaks and valleys, but you keep going. You keep working, you keep struggling, and that's what Mackenzie and I are going to continue to do. We're going to keep raising our boys, we're going to keep serving the Lord, and we're going to keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I know every single one of you all have stood firm with us along this journey, and I'm grateful. And I can't go on without saying these races, you got to have somebody that supports you and stands firm with you. And I've been fortunate and blessed to be on this journey with my best friend and my soulmate, Mackenzie Cameron. A lot of you all over the course of these last several weeks got to see me out on the trail as we did our statewide tour, but that was only possible because of Mackenzie, because she was willing to do a lot of bath time and get them in for bedtime by herself. And I told her that she's been our anchor, and she has been the cornerstone of our family and our rock. And I'll be forever grateful for her being on this journey with us. Let me also say to my mom, who is a prayer warrior, and even last night, I know, and this morning, sending us encouraging texts. And Mom, I'm so grateful for you. Thank you. Thank you. And to my dad, who just recently moved back. However, he did not become a Kentucky voter. He's just across the river in Indiana. But Dad, so thankful that you're here tonight as well, and glad that you're back home. To Grams and Papa D, to Daryl and Susan, who have been on this journey with us since 2020, when Mackenzie and I started dating and got married. Thank you all. Thank you to you all, to the entire family, for the way in which you've embraced me and been on this crazy journey with us. It's been a crazy one, but I love you all, and so very thankful, very thankful. And I want to say to Nathaniel Hurt, to Abby Graves, Nathaniel, thank you for the way in which you ran this campaign. Obviously, when you came on board, it was, we were very grateful and thankful for your service, and know that you're going to have a bright future, man, a bright future. To Atlee, who has been my right-hand man. You know, Atlee is someone who indulged my 1995 WWF kid inner person. We spent a lot of time on the road, and I can't have imagined doing it with anyone else. Atlee is like a younger brother to me, and will continue to be like a younger brother to me. So grateful for you, brother. I appreciate you. And to Abby Graves, who came here from Tennessee to be with us, thank you, and Deanne Graham for helping us on the fundraising front. Let me also say Danny Diaz is here from FP1. I want to thank him as well. And then, of course, who, when I was still at Frost Brown Todd, came over when I was running for Attorney General, Brandon Moody, who has been with me from the very beginning, rode over with us, and so honored by you, brother. Thank you. I did call Congressman Barr, and I told him that I was grateful for the campaign that he ran and for the way in which he articulated his vision for our 120 counties. And my hope is that when the votes are tallied in November and the last vote is counted, he will be Senator-elect Andy Barr. And what I told him and I offered him on the phone was that if I can be of any service to him during this fall season and during this general election campaign, I will certainly do it. But to all of you all, again, it has been an honor of a lifetime to see so many friends and familiar faces that are here this evening that have walked alongside us. I'm grateful. Know that this journey for us is not over because we get to be parents to 3 boys. Our mission field is going to be our home. It's going to be Theodore, Bennett, and Harrison. And I can't wait to see, as they grow up, what they ultimately provide to this community, because that's why we got into this race. It was about our kids, and your grandkids, ensuring that they lived in a country that lived up to the ideals of its founding, a country that was based on merit and opportunity. And I want them and all the kids across this Commonwealth to know that they are image bearers of God and that they can do anything that they set their mind to. I think that's something that every day all of us are charged with in talking to future generations, to let them know that anything can be achieved in this great country. This is a shining city on a hill. It is very much the greatest nation on earth, and it's in that spirit, it's been an honor to run in this race. It's been an honor to serve in public service, and it's been an honor to know you all. God bless you, and God bless this Commonwealth. Thank you.
There you have it, Republican Daniel Cameron in the U.S. Senate race conceding defeat here at 4 minutes past 8. The polls have been closed in this Louisville area since 6 o'clock 1 hour ago. They closed in Western Kentucky, and from President Donald Trump's Truth Social account, take a look at your screen, folks. Here's the graphic that the president put out about 10 minutes ago. Andy Barr wins. Of course, we are looking very closely at the Thomas Massie Ed Gallrein race, where Ed Gallrein is up right now in that race. Big developments here as we are still on the air with you past 8 o'clock, continuing to watch it along with more speeches coming on the way. I want to bring in our political reporter, Isaiah Kim Martinez. He is in the Andy Barr headquarters. And Isaiah, a couple of things that struck me with the Daniel Cameron speech there, the concession speech. I don't know if you were able to listen to it. Is he said, "I hope he will be the Senator-elect Andy Barr," something that he would not do. Remember at Churchill Downs, right after we got that Oaks Night endorsement of Andy Barr from Donald Trump, Daniel Cameron was pressed, "Are you going to stay in the race? Will you support Andy Barr?" And he just wouldn't do it. But here he is, aligning with him here tonight. What did you think of that?
Well, Doug, I did pick up on that. You know, the fact that they said that they had a conversation. We're actually hearing from a pretty well-known guitarist here just ahead of Representative Barr's victory speech. We can expect that in a few minutes. But as far as Daniel Cameron saying that he called Andy Barr and let him know that if there's anything he can do to support him in his campaign to win that seat, that he would do that. To your point, though, Daniel Cameron, when he was asked about that on Derby Day, whether he would drop out of the race and support Andy Barr, you got this sense at that point that Daniel felt that this was his sort of last chance, right? There isn't a clear path for another race that he could win, certainly not after losing twice in a gubernatorial and a senatorial race. As far as what's next for him, that next political office, this was sort of his last shot. Now, I mean, he's a man of his party, right, as we've seen. For him, there's really nothing to lose to go ahead and support Congressman Barr. I'm sure Daniel Cameron would prefer a Republican in that seat than not. For him, it was very much sort of a foregone conclusion that after this race was said and done, that he would go ahead and support the party in this effort.
I want to talk about the Democratic primary real quickly. I'm watching the Associated Press numbers with 31% of the votes being counted. Charles Booker just barely holding on to a lead by maybe 3,000 votes or under, 42% to Amy McGrath's 39%. Where is this support coming from? Isaiah, I'll let you start.
Well, Doug, I'm going to go ahead and pull that up right now because we see Charles Booker and Amy McGrath sort of in a dead heat here, you know, about 2-3% separating the two. That's going to be one really interesting to watch because many of those polls that we saw recently, there weren't many, but they showed Charles Booker with, you know, far and away, you know, double-digit lead in this race. But something that I picked up on pretty early on in these votes being tabulated, and that was in northern Kentucky, which, by the way, Amy McGrath is based in northern Kentucky now. That is her home. Those counties, Kenton, Campbell, Boone, she is doing very well. I don't believe Charles Booker was up there a whole lot campaigning. Amy McGrath certainly was. So I'm just wondering how much that played a factor here. Of course, Charles Booker looks to be winning big in both Louisville, Frankfort, and Lexington. And there's an understanding that if you can win those three counties in Jefferson County, Franklin, and Fayette County in a Democratic primary, you essentially have the win there. It seems to be that is his route. But Northern Kentucky, as both Iris and David has highlighted throughout tonight, you cannot overlook that, and that seems to be what's keeping her in this race.
Okay, I want to talk to our analysts real quick. And now, Isaiah, shout out if Andy Barr gets there. We'll go right back to you. David, your analysis here in the Charles Booker race.
You know, as we go through some of these numbers, where you're seeing Booker perform very well right now is actually in the 6th district. So in those counties in and around Fayette, those are where he's winning races, where Amy McGrath used to be based out of there. So it's kind of like he's winning in her former territory. You're looking also, when you're seeing these numbers, it is not showing you Jefferson County yet. Yeah. When you're looking at the numbers that have come in so far, only 17% of Jefferson County has been reported according to the AP. When I'm looking at the county clerk's numbers, Booker is running up basically like a 2-to-1 margin on McGrath there. So, you know, again, in a typical kind of like Democratic race, you try to run up the score in Jefferson County and then do what, you know, get your votes and do what you can as it goes to the western
we have
part
seen
of the state.
That happen so much. Iris, is this a case where we just need the election results to catch up from the big metro area of Louisville?
Right, yeah, so a statewide race cannot overstate it. I mean, Louisville is where it's at. We have the high concentration of votes here. And so, when Jefferson County comes online, I suspect, not that we're the deciding county, but as these other counties are reporting, depending on how steep that margin is, the difference between the two front runners here, and then Jefferson piles on. I mean, I think that could, show us where we're heading for the night.
I would like to.
There's no numbers from Fayette County yet.
No numbers from Fayette County.
Yeah.
All right. I'd like to check in with Alex Dieter. If she's on standby, you guys can let me know. We'd like to go there. She's following the election results on this, and the Charles Booker race is so fascinating. Alex, are you following this? What are you keeping an eye on?
Right, Doug. So as we can see, a lot of green here in the Kentucky counties, but we can see that Charles Booker is leading by about 2-3% ahead of Amy McGrath right now. But let's take a look right now at voter trends. So what we're seeing so far, and again, only 31% reporting so far, but we are seeing a little bit of a decrease, but these numbers are going to continue to come in since 6 years ago in the Democratic primary for Kentucky. But what I really want to focus on, Doug, and give you guys kind of an insight right now to these numbers and trends as they come in, it's kind of really amazing to see. So when we come back here to the Gallrein and Massie election, called Gallrein as the Republican nominee, I want to take a look right here at these voter trends. So what we see right here is, take a look at this. Since 2024, we see here the Republican primary voters, 52,000 and a half. And we're seeing here, I mean, votes are still coming in at only 76% in so far. We are already at 839, so 84,000, almost 85,000 voters right here. So we are seeing an incredible voter turnout so far right here from the votes that are coming in and continuing to come in. We're going to expect that number to continue to climb. But again, when we look at these trends, it's really amazing. And as the days and the weeks come by, we'll know what really drove all of these voters to the polls. But we're continuing to see these voter trends, and they are really skyrocketing here in District 4. As we've seen tonight. And again, they're still continuing to come in. And when we look at those voter trends and those polling trends, what we've seen is that Gallrein has really done well in more of the senior citizen voters, which we've been seeing. And then for Thomas Massie, voters under 55 years old. And we've seen him really try and go for the younger Republicans, which didn't really pan out for him in this Kentucky Republican primary. But I just can't keep going back to this. The number of voters that really turned out for this District 4, Congressional District 4 race has just been astonishing to see it continue to grow tonight.
So, Alex, let's go back to that crucial Boone County, Kentucky. They're so close to the Cincinnati metro area. How is that showing up for you right now, as we're now 12 minutes past 8?
Right, Doug. So we've got almost 100% of polling reported, almost 100% of the polls reporting. But we've seen that Gallrein really took a 10% lead ahead of Massie. But when we kind of look at the voter turnout here, again, we're just seeing this skyrocketing number of voters who turned out to the polls. You can see here, without even 100% of votes reported, we've got 19,000, almost 20,000 Republicans who came out to vote in the primary, which comparatively, back in 2020, we saw 16,000, which was still about 4,000 less than we've been seeing. So this Boone County right now, it's really bringing out the voters, as we've seen throughout all of these elections and throughout District 4. We've seen a huge number of voters come out. But again, almost 100% in. Gallrein has been called the Republican nominee and wins Boone County so far by about 10%.
You're right. Associated Press has called it for Andy Barr, Ed Gallrein. So, Iris, right now, if you're Thomas Massie, what's holding you off from coming out and conceding this race?
Well, that uncomfortable phone call needs to be made. And so the staffers on each side need to coordinate that to ensure that typically that's a tradition that's observed where, the concession is made more private with each of the candidates, connecting over the phone. And once that has been made, that's typically an indicator of when the concession speech will take stage, and then the one who prevails can then speak. And so I think we're waiting a little bit on that. I mean, who knows if President Trump is also trying to communicate.
Let's go live.
Let's go.
Massie is on stage now at almost 15 minutes past 8. Let's go to Northern Kentucky.
All right. Listen, I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Gallrein in Tel Aviv. I did get a call through, though. I have called and conceded the race. We've been honorable the whole time, and we're going to stay that way. You know, welcome to the most expensive congressional primary ever in the 250-year history of this country. It's not just the most expensive. This thing went on longer than Vietnam. It started 9 months ago, and they didn't even have a candidate, and they decided they want to take me out. I want to start by thanking the volunteers who have put so much effort into this. Some of you came from all across the country. Some of you are homegrown. Well, I love all of you. All right, hold on. All right. I see how this is going to work. I'm going to have to not quit talking or you'll start doing it. I want to thank my staff, too. Some of my staff have been with me from the very first race in 2012, and they have done so much. We've never had, contrary to all the BS you've heard, we've never had a single ethics complaint filed against me or my staff in 14 years. I want to thank the donors. Now listen, I'd name them all, but there's 50,000 donors, okay? We didn't lose this race because we didn't have enough money. You know, it is the most expensive race ever. I think when they add it up, right now they can count 35 million. I think when they add it up, it's going to be a lot more than that, because on our side, we know we spent more than 15 million. And we were able to go toe-to-toe. There was never a week that we got outspent more than 2-1 in this entire race once it got underway. And that's also, it wasn't just the grassroots donors. We had a long time, one of my longest friends, he went through a rough spell, and I never left him. I always supported him. And he actually started the super PAC, the one that nobody knows who runs it, Cliff Maloney. If you're around, would you come up here? Maybe I can get him out here to take some credit. Or if he's in the crowd, just pick him up and surf him over here. Cliff. I see, by the way, I see one of my online influencer heroes, Bobby Sauce, over here. There were a lot of surreal moments in this race, and frankly, in being in Congress. But being in a side-by-side racing through the woods with Bobby Sauce was definitely it wasn't even on my bucket list. It was amazing. So, and getting to that point, I want to thank the influencers who came all this way and produced all the videos and got out the young vote. I want to thank my family. That's who we have arrayed back here, my grandbabies, all three of them. She's clapping, too. It's a little bit overwhelming for them, but they are what recharges my batteries when I come back from Washington, D.C., these grandbabies. And that's what we're fighting for, really, is the next generation and the next generation after that. But I have to especially thank my wife, Carolyn. Her parents knew what they were doing when they named her. Her middle name is Grace. And, but she's a fighter. I mean, she's been tweeted at twice by the chief executive of the most powerful country in the world. She blames me for that because I didn't invite him to the wedding. But also, she voted this morning, and she came out and she said, well, that was a wild experience. That was great. I never imagined that would happen. And I said, what happened? She said, I got to vote for my husband and my favorite congressman. I said, that's practically a throuple. Oh. In all seriousness, walking out here and seeing all of you has really energized me, and it has all along. But why am I hopeful right now? Because if you looked at the crosstab in the polling, and I'm sure if we had exit polling, it would show the same thing. We have the younger demographic. We You are patriots, and you will inherit this country, and you will make it better, and I am hopeful because of that. Thank you. We accidentally, I think, didn't mean to do this. It started out as an election, and it turned into a movement. I think people, if you're not tired of politics, if you're not jaded, if you're not cynical, and so many people are, the people that want somebody that'll go along to get along. I've never heard of that strategy, but that seems to be what the voters want. That's what's been promised to them, but not the young voters. I mean, we stirred up something. There is a yearning in this country for somebody who will vote for principles over party. You all don't like bullies, and you don't tolerate them, and I love you for it. You also... Yeah. They couldn't... Listen. Hey. If I'd known this speech was going to be this fun to give, I would have come out 15 minutes sooner. Look, for 14 years, those SOBs in Washington tried to buy my vote. They couldn't buy it. Why did the race get so expensive? Because they decided to buy the seat. And it got real expensive for them. Look, they used a lot of dirty tricks, but we stayed the course. We didn't bend a knee. We didn't throw a foul ball. We didn't do any of those things. We didn't kneecap anybody. We had lots of opportunities to try a lot of stuff like that, and we never did it. We ran a clean race. Hey. And by the way, after 18 months of a blackout of not letting me on Fox, they finally let me on Fox today, 4 hours into the election. Hey, their slop is selling, so they'll keep selling it. But listen, I got to watch Fox also for the first time in 18 months. And there was the president talking about, by the way, while gas is almost $5 and diesel's almost $6, they're talking about this big ballroom they're going to build, and it looks like the Roman Empire, architecture from the Roman Empire. I see a few analogies there, and people are just trying to make ends meet. But we were promised that Miriam Adelson would pay for that ballroom, but she spent so much money in this race, they're going to have to reduce the footprint of that thing. But here's one thing I saw on Fox. They were saying, oh my goodness, we're ready for war. We're about to restart this war. We were supposed to restart this war today, but we can't restart this war today. The war can't start today. They said we got to wait a day. And then it occurred to me, where was the Secretary of War yesterday? He was here. Listen. Wait. No. Look on the bright side. No more wars. No more wars. No more wars. No more wars. Guys, knock that off. You're going to make me feel good about losing. What I wanted to do was give you all credit. When they saw the influencers here, they panicked. They sent the Secretary of War here, and you stopped the war for a day. All right. We know we don't want a war, and we know why young people and middle-aged people are against the next war. Because we'd be the ones fighting it. They're trying to bring back the draft. Screw that. We're not going to fight. We're not going to fight some other country's wars, are we? No. What else do we stand for? We don't want to send our money overseas. Okay, I'll go for that. I've got a bill to do that. I've also got a bill to end the Department of Education. Rand Paul says he wants to pass a law that you need one day to read 10 pages of every bill. I asked Rand, what are you going to do about my bill that's one sentence long to end the Department of Education? That'd be like 5 minutes to read that bill. By the way, do you know how many pages the Epstein Files Transparency Act was? 2 pages. We're tired of meddling overseas. We can't afford it. Our empire will collapse if we keep sending our money to other countries. I never picked a fight with the country that's tried to take me out here because I've never voted for foreign aid to any country. We got to take care of America first. America first. America first. America first. America first. America first. By the way, you remember that organization that Klaus Schwab started called the World Economic Forum? They said you should eat bugs. Do you want to eat bugs? They said you'll own nothing and be happy about it. You want to do that? Well, guess what happened? Guess what happened to Klaus's CEO? He was in the Epstein files. He had to resign. We took out the CEO of the World Economic Forum with a 2-page bill. What else are we for? Look, for years I've been standing up for the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the 10th Amendment. I just realized the 7th Amendment is under attack. It's because I serve on the Judiciary Committee. The 7th Amendment is your right to a jury trial. They've taken it away for vaccines. If you get hurt, you can't sue for vaccines. They're trying to take it away for pesticides. They're trying to take it away for these data centers. No. We've been fighting that back. So that's an amendment that, frankly, I didn't think I was going to have to fight for, but I've been fighting for it in D.C., and we need to keep fighting for the 7th Amendment, too. These corporations want get-out-of-court-free cards. We're not going to give them one. What else is part of our coalition? Cutting spending. They ran Doge out of town. Elon Musk found out it was easier to land a rocket backwards. It was easier to get a car to drive itself. It was easier to put internet on Antarctica than it was to cut $100 of spending in Washington, D.C. It's a tough problem, but we're not going to give up on that either. MAHA. Is anybody here for MAHA? Does anybody want to eat poison? No. Do you want the government telling you what to eat? No. Do you want the government telling you to put a needle in your arm? No. I don't either. And that's why I've been fighting all of that stuff. We need food freedom. We need medical freedom. We need all of those freedoms. And we need basic decency. We need basic decency. That's what the Epstein Files Transparency Act was all about. By the way, today is the 6-month anniversary of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. We've taken out 24 CEOs, an ambassador, a prince, a prime minister, a minister of culture. And that was just 6 months. I got 7 months left in Congress. When did bipartisanship become a dirty word in this country? It never should be. By the way, I'm not even sure that I'm bipartisan. Bi means you like both. I might be trans-partisan because I can't identify with either some days. That's the great thing about the polls being closed. They can't run an ad where I claim to be trans. Transpartisan, thank you very much. I don't know which cloakroom to go in. So, but look, if you know, I bet you've been through, some of you studied political science. By the way, that's not a real science. I'm a political science denier. If you're already halfway through that degree, double major in theater and call it political theater. Then you can serve on the Oversight Committee, the Judiciary Committee. You can be on the whip team. What's the difference between a used car salesman and a member of the whip team? The used car salesman knows when he's lying. They go around telling everybody, oh, that good stuff's in the bill. Oh, that bad stuff's not in the bill. I don't blame them. They haven't read the bill. They're not lying. They don't know they're lying. Anyways. Bipartisanship, we need to bring this country together. There's too much of the uniparty in Washington, D.C. What we need is a unity
Massie giving
party.
his concession speech. It's been going on quite some time now. Let's switch to Lexington. Andy Barr giving his victory speech here at the Central Bank Center in Lexington.
And let me thank all of the veterans in this room and throughout this Commonwealth. Anything we do in our future is because what you did in the past. My friends, in 6 months, there will be another election night. And between now And then the left will make its stand. It will bring its craziness
leave Andy
to our
Barr and go
borders.
to Ed Gallrein now, speaking in northern Kentucky, victorious in the 4th congressional race.
They're good, and I speak fluent Kentuckian. But I start with God is good. Amen. Now, some folks, I want you to bear with me. It might not make sense to all of you, but it's a long way from a family dairy farm on the river bottoms here in Kentucky to standing in front of you here tonight as the Republican nominee for Kentucky Congressional District 4. The winner of the race tonight is not so much Ed Gallrein. I'll come back to that. But it's the Republicans of Kentucky Congressional District 4 and their families who I will be a champion for in Washington. They're the winners. I want to thank a few folks, and bear with me, I'll keep this short. I want to thank President Trump for his support, his endorsement, and his counsel as I navigated this campaign, which is a journey of unto itself, and for his courageous leadership of our nation at this critical time. I want to emphasize that, this critical time and juncture in history. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank my family that have endured this campaign in many ways that have been so unfair to them. I want to thank my team back here, and this is some of them here. Round of applause. Now, we got a saying on the farm that family farm is a contact sport. I can tell you that campaigning is one as well, isn't it, folks? A lot of talent back here. I want another round of applause for my team. Not only the ones in here, but I see them out there as well. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for what you've done, and thank you for what you do. Can I take a minute and also thank my teachers, all the way back to Miss Harden at St. Paul, Sister Mary Dorothea, Sister Mary Fulgence, Coach Walt Heath from Franklin Simpson just sent me a note, and I could go on, but the kind of people that shaped me into the young man I was and never realized till so many years later, you know, what they'd done, including my FFA teacher, Mr. Hammers, World War II veteran sniper, wonderful man, humble as the day is long. I want to thank my teammates from FFA, that's Future Farmers of America, for you out-of-towner folks. That's a big deal in Kentucky, okay? FFA. To football, to SEAL team and the Joint Special Operations team that I've served on all over the world. Thank them for they made me the better person that I am. And the more I was promoted, the more awards I got, the more humble I came. Now my focus is on advancing the president's and the party's agenda to put America first and Kentucky always. I'm going to keep this simple because, again, I speak fluent Kentuckian. Because for the same reasons I joined in 1983 to serve our nation. Remember, I didn't join to be a Navy SEAL, I joined to make a difference. And being a Navy SEAL was the path to do that. Weren't no books and movies, never met one. I learned to swim in the Ohio River. That's ill-advised, but that's what I did on the farm. Would have got a whooping had I found out at the house there I did that. But for the same reason I entered as a Navy SEAL officer in 1983, because I had the audacity to think I could make a difference. And I did. I will serve this district, my party, and my nation with that same audacity to make a difference for them, their families, our district, our party, and our nation. God bless America. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for coming tonight. Thank y'all. That's sad.
Well, Ed Gallrein there was not kidding when he said this would be a short victory speech. So far tonight, you've seen live concession speeches from Daniel Cameron, Thomas Massie. We brought him nearly to you in full. Victory speeches from Ed Gallrein, Andy Barr, and this from President Donald Trump just a little while ago. On the Massie thing, he was a bad guy. He deserves to lose. Thank you very much, everybody. That Trump quote coming from ABC News tonight. We're waiting to hear from Charles Booker here in Louisville in the Portland neighborhood. Hope to bring you that live in a moment. But first, we've got a lot to talk about. I want to talk about that incredible scene we saw with Thomas Massie. Seemed almost most like a rally Iris and David, than a concession speech. He said, in fact, if I knew the speech was going to be so much fun, I'd have come out a lot earlier. But he did take a shot at Gallrein right to the top, saying he had hoped to get a hold of him to concede the race, but he said, I had a hard time finding him in Tel Aviv, sort of a volley toward the $9 million in AIPAC money coming into this race. What did you think about that when you heard that?
Congressman Massie, bitter into the end here. And I mean, that kind of rhetoric is what, accumulated over these months here, and we got the results as expected. And so, Congressman Massie is digging in, and can't say I'm surprised at sort of the posture and how he's exiting this primary night.
This concession speech, though, was huge and loud and boisterous, and it almost seemed like he was giving a victory speech, David. So where in the end can we say he lost this race?
I think he got outspent. I think that,
but he said money wasn't an issue. Remember, he said we didn't lose this race because we didn't have enough money.
I understand that, but at the same time, what you had was there was a lot of outside money that came in on this race to kind of frame him as someone who was not being loyal to President Trump. Even though Massie will say, I voted with you 90% of the time, but you want 100% loyalty. So that's that's just the realities of the race. And quite frankly, one of the things when you're the candidate up there and you've run a race and you've seen all this outside money coming in, you're going to get you're going to be bitter. And one of the hard things that you have to do as a candidate is try to hold those emotions in check, particularly when you're giving your concession speech. And I think what you're just seeing there with Congressman Massie is he just like, I'm letting it all kind of hang out.
But Doug, if I may add, I mean, yes, money will always be a factor, but what the outside groups and what the contrast messaging towards Massie, like what was it about? There were key votes during the first Trump administration and in this current Trump administration where Thomas Massie was the sole no vote in times where he voted with Democrats.
But wait a minute, but remember with Massie was known as, what was his nickname? Congressman No. Because he always voted no. That's what got him into Congress. He was one of the original Tea Party Congress people, along with with Rand Paul. That was his brand. He has always been on brand. But I think that what this shows is your brand can then be in style one cycle or a couple of cycles, and then after a while you're voted out.
This cycle, it was
Did it have the short shelf life, that brand?
Tonight we saw the anti-establishment part of the party and how they could perform, and then the Trump domination of leading the Republican Party, and which sort of theme prevailed and what motivated voters, and the anti-establishment piece of, I have this independent streak, clearly did not show up in the way that Congressman Massie needed. And I think because the contrast was, when Trump needed you or when every other Republican fell in line, where were you? You were with Democrats.
Did he fail to recognize this, or was he just a little late to the game to say I voted 90% with Donald Trump, but it's never been personal? Because you're right, that was his mantle. That was his brand. I bucked the trend. I'm going to vote the way my gut tells me I should. I'm not going to vote party politics.
And that would have only worked if CD4 was in lockstep with Congressman Massie. But like what we've seen as Trump has run multiple times now, is that CD4 is loyal to President Trump and how he's performed in the 4th Congressional District. And so it would be one thing if polls showed early that, that voters resonated with sort of bucking the establishment, that libertarian independent streak, but no information has ever shown that that was going to be a clear delineation from how Republican voters would feel comfortable leaving sort of the Trump camp. That never materialized.
Well, let's talk about that. President Trump, and I have some notes around here somewhere about the margin of victory that he had in that district. Here we go. Trump received about 67% of the district vote in the 2024 general election, carrying all 20 counties with at least 59% of the vote. Thomas Massie also had huge margins when he would run. So you believe that has never eroded in that district?
No.
The Donald Trump the Donald Trump support.
No, and I would also note that Congressman Massie, because of the voter sort of history of CD4, he never had a competitive race. The last competitive race he had was when that was an open seat with the retirement from Congressman Jeff Davis, and there was multiple Republicans running in that primary. Since then, Congressman Massie has not had a competitive race. And so I don't want to diminish his tenure during Congress as a campaigner. However, you contrast that with someone like a Congressman Andy Barr, who just secured the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate seat, being in CD6 and not being successful the first time he ran for that House seat and running time and time again with formidable Democratic opponents. That's a different kind of campaign muscle that you build up over time. And Congressman Massie's never had to be tested on that.
So is Rand Paul going for 2028, or is the Senate race?
Someone needs to check on Senator Paul and to see how he's going to, operate in this current Congress, what kind of rhetoric we can expect from him. And then, yeah, his seat is up. And so I think it would be interesting to see national party leaders, if they're going to have a short-term memory of the primary of 2026, or if this is going to be a theme where the Trump and sort of his allies will continue to intervene in Republican primaries.
So Donald Trump's winning record so far goes back to the Indiana primary. 5 of the 7 candidates he gets. Then we come to Bill Cassidy in Louisiana just this Saturday. And here in Kentucky today, 3. We're talking Andy Barr, Ed Gallrein, and Alvarado in central Kentucky. Ralph's been around a long time.
Yes, and so a big victory night for President Trump. He swept his Kentucky seats.
Is the Senate race different? So should Rand Paul now be worried if Donald Trump were to decide to turn on him?
I think so. I mean, you kind of like just what what we're seeing now. Even that being said, you still got there's 2 years between now and when Senator Paul will be up for re-election. So some things could change. At that point, President Trump would not be on the ballot, couldn't, run for re-election. So we'll see what type of political power he maintains at that point.
He did say, hey, I'm going to be in Congress for 7 more months, brought up the Epstein files. So do you see Thomas Massie making any more headway on that for 7 months, or is he just a total lame duck from here on out?
I believe he's a total lame duck. I mean, his congressional record shows as much. He does not have any legislative accomplishments in all the terms that he served. He can join congressional Democrats in that pursuit and get a particular audience. But he took a jab at Fox News tonight, which I thought was interesting, and I'm not sure how productive. He's trying to really lay the groundwork for the next 7 months here for himself to have a real platform to speak to the conservative base. But yeah, he may be kind of talking to a wall at this point.
So we have some sound from Ed Gallrein earlier talking about the Epstein files. Let's listen to what he said back then.
The president approved the proceeding with the release of those, and they're methodically going through it. I don't have the details. I haven't been briefed, but to say I have faith, trust, and confidence in those that the president has appointed to those positions, and we should give them the opportunity to work through the process. That legal stuff gets complicated.
So, David, Donald Trump takes out today a key architect of the Epstein files, Thomas Massie.
Yep. I think, what you have seen from the administration thus far is that they want the country to focus on anything but that. And so, like you say, we're talking about the building of the ballroom, and we've got the war happening in Iran and gas prices being what they are and things like that. So, yeah, I think that's just the last thing that this administration wants anybody to be talking about.
We should say that there is a Democratic nominee in the 4th congressional race tonight. That's Melissa Strange. And now we have Ed Gallrein. Is this pretty much done and over with? Iris, you know that district so well. Does the Democrat have any chance at all in the 4th congressional district?
No, we can switch topics and talk about the U.S. Senate race. No, the performance of a Democrat in CD4 has not been competitive for decades now. And so, never say never, right? I think Ed Gallrein needs to run a smart, efficient campaign. But if the election were held tomorrow, the general election, he would prevail.
Let's talk about the state of the Democrats real quick, because we're going to take Charles Booker here in just a moment. Logan Gaddy, the head of the Jefferson County Democratic Party, was on with Fox News Saturday night. He said something fascinating. He talked about how the Republicans in Kentucky had a 20 to 30 year step-by-step process before they took over the House, Kentucky House in 2016. And then he said, it's going to take the Democrats in Kentucky 20 to 30 years to get back to that level. Do you agree with that,
agree
David?
with that.
You
I would.
do?
Yeah, I would, because you've got to build the infrastructure back up for the Democratic Party to where you're being competitive on every single race that's out there, starting from school board to to Metro Council. I forgot Metro Council is nonpartisan. Excuse me. But all the races kind of going all the way up to to senator and president, and it's gonna take some time, and it's gonna take, and it also, just real quick, it's also gonna take being smart in terms of the way that we go about raising our money, because we don't have a lot of big dollar donors who are going to be able to drop funds in. You've got to get the mom and pops, consistently giving their dollar.
And we've never seen Andy Bashir coattails yet.
No, and I'm glad you brought Governor Bashir's name up, because that kind of party rebuild starts with true leadership, and we have not seen incumbent Governor Andy Barr step up into that role. And I would encourage Kentucky Democrats, if this is an aspirational goal, you do not have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, our party, where it started, where we were able to bit by bit turn, started with Senator Mitch McConnell, and when he was able to gain that seat and then invest in time, money, energy, and all the down ticket, that's how we've been able to be successful up and down the ticket and throughout the state and turn the state red. I would encourage Kentucky Democrats to figure out who's their leader and what's the vision.
We talked about, I was actually, when I had this conversation back in the green room, for the Democrats, is go back to the Wendell Ford playbook. Wendell Ford was one who believed in we're 120 counties. And the way that we go and we rerun our races. And so essentially, when you're running for governor, you're running for essentially county judge, and you're kind of making it the issues pertinent to the people of your particular locality. So that doesn't mean that you're gonna. I'll say this: you're gonna make your message applicable to the area where you live, but all of us have those common themes of wanting to make sure that we have a better day for our children and our other loved ones that we're wanting to try to make better.
So let's talk about the one person we have not heard from yet, and that also is the Associated Press has not called. The Democratic side for the U.S. Senate race. I'm looking at the Associated Press numbers. Charles Booker now, we've got 43% of the precinct's votes counted, 77,123 votes. Amy McGrath, 76,012 votes, a difference between 41% to 40.4%. What is happening here? Charles Booker is in orange on our map right now over there on that screen. McGrath is green. Iris, David, you've got to weigh in on this. Does Amy McGrath pull a rabbit out of the hat tonight? What is going on with this race?
Here's what I will say about that, and I've been looking at that map all night long. The greens, when you're looking at some of these counties in Kentucky, they're not that. It may be green for McGrath.
Well, let's look at Jefferson County while we're talking.
But you only got maybe you only got 50 votes that came out of that whole county. Jefferson County, according to AP, only 17% of the votes have been cast. Now, when we go to the
Here we go. There's your Jefferson County numbers.
Yeah, and was it saying?
53.9, 30.6%.
But it's still saying it's 17% there. When you go to the Jefferson County Clerk's website and you pull up the numbers there, Booker has he's got 33,141 compared to McGrath's 17,075
in Jefferson.
In Jefferson County, and we don't even have Fayette County reporting yet. So what I'm saying is races in Kentucky always boil down to Jefferson County, Fayette County, Boone, Kenton, Campbell counties, and then you get into like your Owensboro, Bowling Greens, and Paducah's, McCracken County. That's what it boils down to. So it can look like color-wise, somebody else is killing it, but when in actuality, if the big counties haven't reported yet, you got to kind of hold your water.
You both have watched election results for years here. Is something going on with the clerk's office tonight with these results, or are they just slow? What do you think?
No, I don't think they're slow, and we've been here before. I mean, a lot of it is ensuring that there's a lot of scrutiny these days around election results, and so I think there's always a little bit of lag, because think about it. I mean, they work from the bottom up, right? So every precinct, every voting location has a report to in our county, there's regional contacts and before they go to county to Secretary of State. And so I think it's just getting bogged down in the process. We see sources like, AP and some of these other national entities come in where they have other resources and they're able to essentially put boots on the ground. So when tallying is happening real time before it becomes official-ish, they can go ahead and log those in. And so I think we're just seeing a little bit of a slowdown just for folks to be thorough, but I don't think there's any suspicion there.
Yeah. Let's talk to our Alex Dieter real quick about more of these results. So Alex, why don't you zero in on that? You can do it almost nearly down to the precinct with our new election system.
Right, Doug. So again, we're looking at less than 50% of polls reporting from the Associated Press right now, but we are seeing quite a small margin. And as we're seeing right now, an even smaller margin than when you all brought it up just a few moments ago. We're seeing just such a tight race by 0.5% between Charles Booker and Amy McGrath. What we're also seeing trend-wise so far, again, only less than 50% of the polls reporting. We're also seeing a downward trend in the number of Democratic voters in this year's primary. So even with about 44% of polls reporting, we are seeing a decrease in Democratic voters in this primary this year. But what I want to also bring up is that this is not the first time that we are seeing these two names together. So when we look at these two names, back in 2020, Amy McGrath actually beat Charles Booker by about 15,000 votes in the 2020 Democratic primary. And so what we're seeing right now is these two neck and neck. We're also seeing Colonel Pamela Stevenson leading for the third place right now by about 6%. But again, I mean, all eyes have been and will continue to be on Louisville and Jefferson County. When we look at the numbers right here, we're only seeing, from the Associated Press, we're only seeing about 17% of polls reporting, but it does show that Charles Booker is leading by about more than 20%. So that's what we're seeing here right now. And then when we look at the heat, I want to bring this up too. Again, so when we look at this heat from these counties, you can see it's a little more difficult to see on the television, but the lighter colors show where the leads are for both McGrath and Booker. So you can see right here, we're seeing a little bit of a darker orange here showing the lead that Booker has for now here in Jefferson County as those votes continue to come in about a few hours now after the polls have closed. But it's very interesting to see, and I just keep going back to these voter turnouts and reported voters coming out to the polls for these primaries, seeing a sharp decrease. Again, if we multiply this by 2, we're still a sharp decrease from the 2020 Democratic primary, Doug.
Hey, before you leave, Alex, I'm just sort of curious about a couple of races. We really pressed Daniel Cameron on Friday. Will you win Louisville? Will you win Jefferson County? I know we're still waiting for the full brunt of the race, the results to come in, and that race was called early. How is he doing so far in the Jefferson County race? I know it's over with, but I'm just sort of curious.
Right. So if we take a look at Jefferson County, again, 23% polls reporting he's down by about 2,000 votes behind Andy Barr. And again, yesterday, like you mentioned, Doug, I mean, I asked Daniel Cameron, how crucial is it to win Jefferson County? He said it's very important because of the conglomerate of voters that we have here in the county. And I also asked how confident he is that he would win Jefferson County. He said to me that not only is he going to be the Republican nominee, but he's also going to win Jefferson County. And as the AP polls continue to come in and the results continue to come in from the Associated Press, we're seeing that didn't quite pan out for Cameron as Barr was called with 5% of AP polls reporting.
Really slow numbers coming in from Louisville and Lexington, Fayette County. Let's take a look at the Andy Barr race again. What's his margin of victory showing up right now?
The Andy Barr race, you said, Doug?
Yes.
So right now it's showing that he's beating Daniel Cameron by about 20%, we're seeing right here. So he's got about 212,000 votes so far, with about 67% of the polls reporting.
Of course, Andy Barr has already declared victory. The Associated Press calling on that. Now let's go to the other race that is over. The Associated Press and the concession of victory speech has been given. Let's go back to Thomas Massie and Ed Gallrein. How are those votes filling in now?
We are almost at 100% of polls reporting, and that margin continues to stay around 10%. But we do know that it was called, the AP called it about less than an hour ago for Ed Gallrein to be the Republican nominee for the Congressional District 4. But we're seeing here, when we see all these darker colors, it's no surprise that here in Lewis County that Massie took that vote. But it is interesting as well to look at the voter trends again. We've seen about a double in the amount of Republican voters who have come out in this 2026 primary compared to the 2024. And so I just got some word that let's take a look right here at a big change here in McGrath and Charles Booker. So here we have 41% of polls reporting, and McGrath has taken the lead by about 3% over Charles Booker. So let's just take a look right here to see, still here in Jefferson County, what we're seeing here is about 2% reporting. But we are seeing that Amy McGrath has taken the lead so far, under 50% of the polls reporting, but that is just a large change from what we just saw. You saw that margin going to a decline, a decrease, that margin between the two, McGrath and Booker, and now you just saw a flip. All this happened within the last 5 minutes. So as these polls continue, or these results and votes continue to come in, we can continue to see this flip-flop in these races, Doug.
This is fascinating. It's playing out in real time here at 9 o'clock. David, what's going on with this flip here? How is Amy McGrath now on top?
Again, you're seeing.
Is that Fayette County, Central Kentucky?
So I will just to tell everybody, I'm looking at two different sets of vote counts. I'm looking at the vote count that we're seeing from AP, which AP is saying that 2% of Jefferson County vote has been reported. When I go to Jefferson County Board of Elections results, we're seeing significantly higher vote totals than what we're seeing there. So what I would tell everybody is, kind of just stay in this and just keep watching as the night goes on, because we're waiting for these results to start coming in. And it's still showing, again, like a Fayette County, there were zero, from AP, zero votes have been counted there.
All right, Amy McGrath did get on TV the last few days in the waning parts of this race. Do you see her continuing to hold on to this lead?
I was hoping to see more of a lead earlier in the night if it was going to be, a big night for her. And so I think the fact that we're kind of here, I don't know. I don't know if I'm Amy McGrath, I'm sweating a little bit here.
Okay, let's bring in our political reporter, Isaiah Kim Martinez. Isaiah, you were there for Andy Barr. We were able to listen to a little bit of Andy Barr, then we had to get right to Ed Gallrein. Your takeaway of what you heard him say, are we going to see a different candidate from now until November? By the way, 168 days until the November election.
Well, Doug, here's what can kind of paint the whole picture for you. He mentioned President Trump pretty early on in that speech, thanked him for his endorsement, saying that Kentucky is Trump country. The state believes in the America First Trump policy. That's why they voted for him. But he also mentioned the person he's trying to replace, which we haven't heard a lot from. We know that Mitch McConnell's name has sort of been something that Republicans running for that seat have sort of tried to skirt around as they really tried to court that Trump backing. Congressman Andy Barr, who's had a relationship with Mitch McConnell for several years, did thank the senator for his service and sort of gave a nod to him soon after mentioning President Trump. So really, you couldn't ignore that. Within minutes of each other, the congressman going ahead and mentioning the president, and then the sitting senator right there, again, kind of speaking to the fact that he's really trying to be, at this point, the big tent Republican candidate, because now with the win, he really doesn't have to worry about folks from his own party coming at him for maybe being a moderate Republican or maybe not being Trump enough or McConnell enough. That's all off to the side. He is looking to the Democrat in November. I did talk to him after, though. Reporters kind of had some questions for him after the fact. Excuse me, ma'am. We have some folks left here tonight. I asked him for his reaction for Massie's loss here, the fact that Ed Gallrein defeated him. And I asked him, does that essentially reflect the fact that this is Trump's party, plain and simple, here in Kentucky? And he didn't really answer the question, but made it clear that Kentuckians have spoken and said he looks forward to working with Ed Gallrein in Congress. Of course, both have to win their general election, but anyone would tell you, most analysts, that they are pretty heavily favored going into November. Of course, Ed Gallrein would be going against a Democrat in a race where both folks in this, neither would be an incumbent, so it'd be certainly interesting to see in that 4th congressional.
We've had a couple of races tonight break our preconceived notions, of course, Massie and Gallrein, and now this race on the Democratic side, Isaiah, Amy McGrath has moved ahead a bit over Charles Booker. So Andy Barr right now is sitting there where you are in Lexington wondering, who am I going to be facing going into November?
Well, Doug, he still believes, he did mention the fact that it is tight. He mentioned McGrath, he mentioned Booker, said we'll have to see. He's been saying pretty much on the campaign trail he believes that Charles Booker, who he calls the Zohran Mamdani of Kentucky, of course, sort of alluding to his progressive policies, he has long believed that Booker will come out of this primary and that he will face him in the general. He pretty much hasn't named Amy McGrath. So it would be an interesting sort of twist in all this from the Barr campaign's perspective. If Amy was who they were facing come November, might have to potentially alter strategy a little bit, perhaps. I mean, Amy McGrath has been running more sort of the Beshear playbook, sort of the moderate Democrat, maybe more establishment, although she would push back on that term, someone who's willing to work with independents, Republicans. You could argue maybe Andy Barr would have to adjust sort of his trajectory there, but he has beaten Amy McGrath before. That is worth noting. Back when they both ran for Congress, he was up for re-election in 2018. Also a race, by the way, where Trump endorsed him.
Massie Gallrein, this spread of about 10 percentage points we're seeing materialize. We've talked to Thomas Massie for months and months and months. Said Gallrein not so much, he wasn't as accessible. But you were up there just yesterday and spent some time in the northern Kentucky area. Did anybody see a margin that large coming in this race?
Well, Doug, even folks who were confident, who believed Massie should win and would win, did not believe this was going to be some sort of landslide. They were all acknowledging that their gut feeling was that it was going to be close. Of course, I was talking with folks, sort of supporting each campaign. I don't think that many people I talked to, from just kind of talking with them, that gut feeling, felt this was going to be a 10-point sort of landslide victory for Ed Gallrein here. I mean, you look up and down those counties, northern Kentucky, the eastern part of that district. I mean, outside of Massie's home county, there was not a sort of resounding win for Thomas Massie in any of those counties that we've been looking at over the last hour. So whether you're a pollster, whether you're a voter, it seems that even if you had Gallrein up in this race, that he exceeded expectations here as far as how much he'd win by.
You and I talked earlier. I did not think at 6 minutes past 9 we'd be sitting here talking about Amy McGrath and Charles Booker in an undecided race. I thought it would be Massie and Gallrein.
It really goes to show you that some of these races, and we don't get to see a lot of sort of the door knocking aspect of it. In Amy McGrath's case, of course, we're still waiting for a big portion of Louisville and Lexington, Fayette County and Jefferson County to come in. Like our analysts have talked about, Iris and David, that could potentially swing the race in Charles' favor quite a bit, Charles Booker. But, I mean, Amy has gotten around the state, Amy McGrath, quite a bit. I mean, she had stops across the state, not that Booker hasn't, but we sort of don't get to see a lot of those face-to-face interactions, and maybe that played in her favor, maybe more than we realize. And as far as Ed Gallrein and Massie, I mean, that was a race that developed and changed quite a bit here in the last few weeks.
Now, you spoke it into existence, Isaiah. Thank you very much. But Charles Booker's now back up ahead, 42% to 39%. So, Iris, David, let's talk to you both about this. When do we have a settlement in this case? What else are we waiting for still to come in this tight Democratic?
Jefferson County now at this point, right, David? So Jefferson County for sure, with 62%, according to some of our folks here with the AP and others, saying that Fayette County is reporting 62% of the vote in, and Booker is up with a healthy lead. I mean, again, try to ignore county lines for a moment. The fact that he has earned, at this point, over 21,000 votes. And then Amy McGrath, again, this used to be her backyard, 9,500 votes. I mean, like, that is quite impressive. I mean, kudos to Charles Booker.
Here's
and
Fayette
being,
County on
yep,
the screen.
being an effective campaigner there.
Wow.
Again, like, that's a place, if you would have asked me, 6 months ago, I would have just bet, like, oh, Amy McGrath will run up the score there, as she should, as she needs to, in order to prevail and maybe stop the bleeding in Louisville, when we know several Louisville candidates, right, are going to carve up that.
Is this showing Amy McGrath fatigue then in that home district?
I don't know if it's fatigue or I think primary Democratic voters want to go in a different direction. And I mean, both candidates have been on the ballot a couple times, but clearly the goods that Amy is selling out there, either she walked out of Lexington and didn't come back, or whatever she was saying just wasn't resonating with primary voters. But I'm stunned at 62% reporting in Fayette. How far of a lead Charles Booker has is extremely impressive.
And you're still not seeing the Louisville number. I'm telling you, like, when you're looking at AP, but then you're able to go and actually see Jefferson County raw numbers from our website, this is going to be over quick once those numbers actually catch up. AP catches up to those numbers.
So our Ian Hardwitt is at Charles Booker's headquarters, and that is in the Portland neighborhood. We expect to hear from him any moment, so we're going to take that because we've been bringing you all the victory and the concession speeches. While we wait on that, let's talk about the Louisville mayor's race. We heard from the top two vote getters tonight, that is the current incumbent mayor, Craig Greenberg, and then council member Shamika Parrish-Wright. Here's the vote total. Again, these are the two who will run to November and be on your ballot in about 168 days from now. Again, we have sound from them as our folks have been out around interviewing the different candidates.
Well, tonight, while the votes are still being counted, it is very clear that we're going to win this primary election tonight. We are going to keep marching forward to win the general election. And we're celebrating once more tonight, and I'm thankful for each of you and everyone around this city for taking the plunge with me once again for 4 more years. That's good. Tonight, thank you. Tonight, Louisville voters are sending a clear message that we're making real progress for Louisville families, that steady leadership matters, that when challenges arise, we don't back down. We come together, work hard, and move forward. And for that trust, for your support, for your belief in this city and our future, thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart.
And now let's go to Shamika Parrish-Wright, the Metro Council member who ran for mayor.
I have to start home and go through and see what's happening and how we can make things better. I have people reaching out to me, sending me letters, emails about things they're experiencing internally, and I want to make Metro government work for everyone, right? I want it to be fair, I want it to be affordable, I want it to be for the people, but people are paying their taxes to access Louisville Metro government services, but it feels like if you don't have enough money in your bank account or you're in the right zip code, you don't get the same level of support and care. We are trying to level the playing field with our vision and our plan. And I hate to always send people to the website, but it's a lot of things to run off. But if they go to shamikaforlouisville.com, we have also highlighted a policies page that talks about those policies, including the things that people have told us at the doors that matter to them, from public transportation to real sustainable energy. We have a 2030 plan for sustainable energy, and we're in 2026. And it doesn't look like we're going to meet those goals, right? So we make things look good on paper in Louisville. I'm trying to get in and level set and make sure it actually works for the people.
Okay, so here we go. The first ever nonpartisan race. We are witnessing history. We all saw it unfold today. If you voted today, you saw the candidates out there without a D or an R next to their name. How does this race play out, the Louisville mayor's race, play out from here to November?
Well, if I'm Mayor Craig Greenberg tonight, it was a big win. Not only did he prevail as the top vote getter, because as Louisville voters, we experienced when you got to your ballot, you pick one, right? So you don't vote for two, you pick the one. So Craig Greenberg being the top vote getter and a big margin, right, more than half. So it's not like he was able to, or the other side and all the options on the ballot were able to diminish. He overwhelmingly, was able to secure the first vote getter spot. I think what we'll see now is when there's only two options in the November election, that I expect a healthy margin of victory for Mayor Greenberg, because instead of having 8+ candidates, the head-to-head, I think the kind of campaign that Greenberg will run will resonate with the majority of voters. Shamika of Parish Rights, a pretty fierce campaigner. She has got quite the support, even though it's not on the level of Craig Greenberg tonight. Let me ask you, in your races for Metro Council, would you have liked a nonpartisan race?
No. No, I mean, like we were alluding to it before. Fayette County's had nonpartisan races for a long time. Everybody knew who was a Democrat, who was a Republican.
But you got to do your research to find out.
No,
the voter does.
I mean, you can just see how are they responding, how do they vote, what do they vote on, what do they support, and you kind of, you just see it, kind of play itself out. So to me, running under a party banner, one way or the other, didn't hurt me. And I will say this, and particularly in light of everything that we are seeing across the country, particularly as we're talking about the rollback of the Voting Rights Act, okay? Traditionally, nonpartisan races have been used as mechanisms to suppress the influence of African American voters in the electoral process, because it winnows down their vote power in order to be able to select a candidate of their choice. And so it's not by accident that we're seeing some of these changes now happen, where we're saying, oh, we're running in nonpartisan races. All you have to do is look down in Georgia, where their legislature made 5 Democratic counties where their local elected officials, their county judges, their judges have to run nonpartisan, but the rest of the state can run in a partisan manner. So those are the things to think, but we could have that a conversation on another streaming podcast.
It's an excellent point. And I'm so glad you brought it up, because it's something we're all trying to wrap our minds around. A lot of people trying to get used to this. So before we leave and before we get the final word, I want to go to our Alex Dieterberg, because Charles Booker's now taken a pretty commanding lead. Alex, go ahead and pinpoint those numbers for us.
Right, Doug. I mean, David, just like you said, as soon as those Jefferson County numbers started rolling in, you can see a 10% difference here between Charles Booker and Amy McGrath. A very different tune than what we saw in the 2020 Democratic primary, when McGrath beat Booker by about 15,000 votes. But again, we're still at about 70% reporting, but with just under 8 or 60% reporting in Jefferson County. You can see this healthy, significant lead between Booker and McGrath by just about more than 30% here between the two. And let's take a look again at this heat. So you can see that right here in Louisville and Fayette County, it's a pretty deep orange color for Booker, showing that he has gained more traction and more votes in these two big counties that we're seeing here in Kentucky. So we're continuing to watch these numbers roll in, but you can see right now that Booker has taken a significant lead, leading McGrath by more than 10% of the vote. And so we'll continue to watch these numbers come in. We've got about 30% more to go, so we're just waiting to see the numbers that AP gives us, Doug.
Alex, thank you so much. Thanks for your good work. And before we wrap it up here, we want to go through some of the top races of the night. Let's start with the 4th District congressional race. You saw it unfold right here as we were streaming live for you on WHAS 11+. You saw Thomas Massie's concession speech, and then Ed Gallrein take the stage for just a short few minutes, as he is the Republican nominee for the 4th District race, which was the most expensive congressional race in U.S. history. We saw that play out, a 10% margin of victory here, something nobody saw coming for Ed Gallrein. Everybody thought this would be a tight race to the end. Donald Trump endorsed Ed Gallrein from Shelbyville. He came out of nowhere with this Trump selection, and he wins. A victory for the president. Again, the ratings are the biggest tonight. TV ratings the biggest tonight at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington. Now let's take a look at the Andy Barr race. Daniel Cameron conceding pretty quickly after the Associated Press called the race for Andy Barr at 7 o'clock. The polls were just closing in Western Kentucky. We didn't even have the full Louisville and Lexington numbers yet, and yet they came out of the gate giving it to Andy Barr, and what a margin of victory, 60% to 31%, as Alex Dieter just showed us. Daniel Cameron not even winning in Jefferson County so far, with the vote total still being counted. And now we have Charles Booker, the apparent Democratic nominee here. Although this race has not been called, these numbers, if we've been on the air with you, have just jumped substantially. Charles Booker with 47% of the vote, 36% of the vote for Amy McGrath, who was really challenging for a while here. Associated Press now saying 71% of the votes being counted in this race. So here's what we have for you later this evening, coming up on the WHAS 11 night team on WHAS 11. We hope you'll join us. We'll be joining all of our reporters and bring you the sound that you may have missed, and they'll be reporting live from the different campaign headquarters. Iris, David, it's been quite the primary. I mean, we are still talking about one race at 20 after 9. Your final thoughts here as we close here on WHAS 11 Plus.
Overall, President Trump had a great day, a great night in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and I suspect all the Republican nominees to prevail come November. But yeah, can't wait for us to reconvene back in November.
David, does the popularity of Andy Beshear translate to anybody? Does he get involved in any of these races? Do we see his footprint at all?
I think that the governor is probably focused on 2028 in his bid for the presidency, and I think then it will be incumbent upon, in this case, I do think at the end of the day we'll see Charles Booker be the winner of the Democratic primary. He does have some support nationally, so others I think will play in this race, and we'll see where it goes from there. The question will be, can Booker have some coattails to try to help other candidates?
Okay, the final question though. Does a progressive Democrat win Mitch McConnell's seat in November? Iris?
No.
David?
I think he has an opportunity, because the whole time that Barr was running the race, he basically parroted what Trump just said a couple of days ago, which is, I don't care about your economic situation. I'm only concerned about everything else that he's talked, whether it be the war in Iraq, whether it's building a ballroom, whether it's putting his name on the Kennedy Center. Those are the things that he's concerned about. Andy Barr has just said, whatever Trump says, put me down for 2 with that. And so I think Charles Booker, through his authentic way of campaigning and relating to people and talking about their real concerns, I think he's got a shot if he has the resources.
A surprising admission I heard him say is he has said recently, here's what I've learned from the Republicans in their playbook. Not that he agrees with them, but I thought that was pretty surprising to hear from Charles Booker.
It's been a while since Kentucky's been on the sort of national stage to have a competitive U.S. Senate race. I think if the intensity nationally, is realized here, not only will Dem resources show up, but so will Republican resources, right? And so in the kind of margin that we have in the U.S. Senate, I think there's going to be plenty of resources for Congressman Barr as our Senate nominee. And our party, we are well conditioned to run a statewide race. And so I suspect that, everywhere, precinct captains, county officials, and so forth, we have an apparatus ready to turn to ensure that we get out the vote come November.
All right, Kentucky, big time in the national spotlight tonight. Thank you both again for joining us. Nearly 3 hours of live streaming coverage. I hope you've enjoyed it. Follow the election results here on WHAS 11. Be back on the WHAS 11 night team for a full wrap-up of tonight's election results. For our team in the field and everybody here at WHAS 11, I'm Doug Proffitt. Thank you so much for joining us on WHAS 11 Plus.